All right, well, let's get started. It is 6 o'clock. Thanks for coming, everyone. And there we go. Got a couple more. Hello. So the purpose of this public forum today is to discuss a little bit about the differences between the gas-powered leaf blower ban that was recently passed by the county council as it relates to the partial year ban that we have in place in the town. So a comparison, if you will, of that, and then just discussing, future in terms of just the proposal on the table of enacting a full year ban in the town 1 year earlier than the county. So Todd has prepared a couple slides here so that whoever listens to this in the future as well can understand this, and then we'll go into an interactive Q&A. All right.
Sure, I'll share my screen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay, this is a short slideshow that will review Montgomery County's recently enacted full year ban, gas-powered leaf blower ban, the town's current partial year ban, and the town's proposed full year ban, or should I say the proposal from the Climate and Environment Committee for a full year ban. I won't read these verbatim, and I know you don't want me to. Montgomery County Council recently passed a bill that bans sale and use of gas-powered leaf blowers. Sale will be outlawed as of July 1, 2024. The use will be outlawed as of July 1, 2025. It applies to gas-powered leaf blowers and vacuums of handheld backpack or walk-behind style. Does not apply to mosquito misters and foggers or snow blowers if they're marketed and sold as such. The county bill exempts certain uses, including or users, including agricultural producers. And importantly, it's not applicable to state-owned or controlled land because the county can't legislate up, it can only legislate down. So what that means is that gas-powered leaf blowers and vacuums are still going to be allowed to be used in county parks, which includes Elm Street Park and Leland Park at the Lawton Center. Because the parks are under the control of MMCTV, the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, which is a state agency. Also notably, gas-powered leaf blowers will still be allowed to be used on county school land, since county schools are under the control of the Maryland State Board of Education. Montgomery County Council has agreed to institute a rebate program to help offset some of the potential financial burden of making the conversion from gas to electric. But their website currently still says stay tuned for more information. The town's current ban, we currently prohibit the use of gas-powered leaf blowers and vacuums between January 1 and October 14. They're allowed to be used between October 15 and December 31. Our legislation applies to handheld backpack or similar equipment used to perform landscaping, including but not limited to the blowing, vacuuming, or moving of grass, leaves, or other debris. It does not apply to snow blowers or blowers used to spray herbicide, pesticide, or fertilizer, even if such blowers are modified gas-powered leaf blowers. The town's partial year ban does not apply, as the county's doesn't or won't, to state-owned or controlled land. So gas-powered leaf blowers can be used at any time in county parks and on school property. And the town also offered a rebate program to residents and contractors for 18 months to help offset the potential financial to offset the financial burden of making the conversion from gas to electric leaf blowers. The proposal in front of the council this evening is a proposal from the town's Climate and Environment Committee, which has recommended instituting a full year ban on gas-powered leaf blowers in 2024. Which is a year earlier than the county. And what this means practically is that the use of gas-powered leaf blowers will be prohibited between October 15th and in the town, between October 15th and December 31st, 2024, and then thereafter completely prohibited, since the county's full year ban will go into effect on July 1, 2025. And we outlaw them during that intervening time in any event. For the proposed ban for 2024, there are no proposed changes to the applicability of the legislation to the types of equipment, meaning it would apply to the same types of equipment I reviewed under the town's current ban. And as it's currently the case, the town's full-year ban would not apply to state-owned or controlled land. So gas-powered leaf blowers could be used at any time in county parks and on school property. The council has asked the Climate and Environment Committee to present a detailed plan on the type of educational materials they will produce to educate residents and contractors about the ban, regardless of the ban's effective date. And the town council welcomes residents' comments on this proposal.
Thanks, Todd.
Sure.
Do my colleagues have any questions or comments right off? Yeah, no, I just want before going in. So I'd love to hear from you all, your questions, concerns, statements, whatever it is that you all would like to say about this. And in terms of the proposal that's in front of the council. The idea here is that because we would be kind of off, or if you will, off schedule from the county, and the communications that would need to take place and enforcement mechanisms and just overall confusion that might take place, you know, what your all thoughts are about this. So, although I kind of can guess, so. So you're welcome to come up here and ask any questions or.
Could you come to the microphone?
Just because we're recording it, so.
The climate and environment committee has submitted ample testimony in support of a full year ban effective January 1, 2024. We made a verbal statement at last month's meeting. We just, you know, there's jurisdictions around us. I think we've said it all. And we feel the time has come, and it's important in terms of noise, which is primarily what we're basing this on, but also pollution. And I think that in general, I think town residents are complying when the ban is in place. So I think we've also submitted, you know, what we'll do in terms of communication, but I think town residents know what this is about and how to do it. The primary enforcement mechanism will be what the village of Chevy Chase is using, which is that card in English and Spanish, which their enforcement officer passes out, but as well residents do pass it out. And the same is used in Somerset. Of course, the village also has police, which can enforce it when necessary. But as we've seen last year, I think they only had one fine issued. The year before, they had 2 fines, but they're doing quite well. So I think the time has come. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Even if it's about what the town might do or just clarifications, stuff like that? Todd, yeah.
The slides, that was really helpful. I didn't know the specifics about the counties.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. No, go for it.
Okay.
We're here all hour. Don't go
Okay.
for it.
I have nothing particularly great to say, except I wanted to thank you, Todd, for that great slideshow, because that really clarified for me what the county is doing. And I personally am really disappointed to hear that it doesn't extend to schools and, parks. So I guess one thing at a time. But I guess I would like to comment that on my walks around town this fall, I feel like I'm not dreaming because I seem to see so many more people raking than I really ever can remember seeing before. And I really haven't run into any gas powered blowers. And I do walk around quite a bit. And tonight there was a electric powered blower being blown on someone's lawn. And I really think the town probably supports this. I think most people really would like to see this in place year round. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, please.
So I have another comment to make. Sorry, Maria Pekkala. I live on Maple Avenue, and I'm a member of the Climate and Environment Committee. So thinking about this, I have to say that I actually switched my position. I was not as favorable to having the ban become active early, but I actually switched my position. And the reason I did that is because of something that I haven't yet heard people mention, and so I wanted to mention it. For me, it was a question of, I looked at it through the lens of equity. So I thought, at first I thought, it's going to be costly for people to have to switch a year and a half earlier from gas powered to electric powered. But then as I learned a little bit more about it, and I learned that there is a rebate program, I thought, okay, that seems to address a little bit of the issue I had, thinking some of these people may be small business owners. A lot of them are immigrants and Latino populations, as opposed to like the big landscaping companies. And I thought, it might be a greater hit on the small business owner as opposed to the large company to have to switch earlier. But once I learned about the rebate, I thought, okay, that we are beginning to address this. And then I thought a little bit more about it, and I thought that there is a hidden cost as well of operating a gas-powered blower for the operator, which is the noxious fumes and the high decibels. And I have seen it. And these people sometimes who operate these gas blowers sometimes have masks, sometimes they don't have masks. We smell the fumes for maybe 45 minutes, for half an hour. They do it for 8 hours a day. And I thought it's a hidden cost on the operators to have to operate these gas blowers. So yes, we would be anticipating the county-wide ban here in the town, but I think it would be for ultimately a better outcome for us, but also for the operators. And so I am in full support of this. Again, looking at it from a slightly different angle, one of equity. And if this wasn't enough, I read that Fanny Gonzalez, who's a council member who represents Wheaton, and she herself says she represents the population that is most likely to be engaged in this work. She supports the ban fully because of the effects on the health of the operators. So my comments, I fully support.
If I could just follow up on a couple, were you aware of the town's rebate program that ran for 18 months prior when we first instituted the partially open?
I was not.
Okay.
No.
Okay. And just to clarify that the rebate program that's being discussed is at the county level.
Right.
I mean, just because I have participated in the Rainscapes program, there's been some communication to landscapers who are part of that Rainscapes program that, by the way, this is happening, and we want to hear from you, business owner, about the type of rebate system that you are interested. So they are already starting to collect information, just for your knowledge about that, which is a good thing. So I just wanted to just kind of talk for a second about that, just as for expectations. Okay.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any Wicca, go for it. No, I saw. Oh, you were waving. I see. I thought you were wanting to. No worries, Stuart. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Sure. I'll add a couple of points that maybe have not come up previously. We did some new analysis on. Somebody raised the issue of what's the cost to residents of the switchover, and the answer is that it depends very much on how quickly the commercial landscapers aim to recover the cost of buying the new equipment. Let's say they've got a fleet of gas-powered blowers and they need to switch over to electric. And the question is, how rapidly do they seek to recover the cost of that electric? And if the answer is they try to recover it over the lifetime of the blowers, which is typically the way sort of big businesses amortize capital costs, then the answer is that there will be a net reduction in costs to homeowners over the lifetime of the equipment for the changeover. If instead, sort of a worst case, if the landscapers try to recover in their first year of operation all the costs of the switchover, the answer, when we, as best we can calculate it, is about a $20 a year savings per household for the summer long growing season, the sort of mow and trim and blow a little bit, sort of the cosmetic use of leaf blowers. So $20 per year savings to a household for that service, and about an $80 increase for a different service, which is the fall leaf cleanups, the spring, maybe a spring tidy up, and the kind of heavy leaf removal throughout the fall season.
Mhm.
So that's a worst case, and $80 for a season relative to it might be a $400 cost for ballpark for what the landscaper might charge for a.
How did you get that data?
That's we've got a big model of all the comparative costs of gas versus electric that includes the fuel cost and the time the operators with the gas, you have to pull the cord and you lose a little bit of time each time you stop and start the blower. So there's a little cost due to that. The cost of recharging batteries, et cetera, et cetera. So worked all that in and sort of have a comparative cost model, which of gas versus electric. And there's some sort of variables associated with that cost, like how quick in those costs are the capital costs of the equipment. But one of the variables is how quickly do you want to recover the capital cost? And sort of there are a couple of key assumptions in there. A typical two-person landscaping crew can serve about 20 households a year. So you might think of sort of the roughest calculation is if the big gas-powered leaf blower, a very powerful one, replacing that with a powerful electric one might cost on the order of $2,000 in capital cost, for $2,500 at most for the big battery in the blower. If you take that $2,500 and you say that cost is going to be recovered in 1 year over 20 households, that's about what, $2,500 divided by 20 is about $120 a year a household for just plain the additional capital cost. But you recover some of that back through reduced operating costs. The operating cost savings add up over time. But anyway, that's the way that calculation works out. And as I say, for the fall leaf cleanups, worst case, it's about $80 a year, something other like that. So basically, we don't think that the cost to residents is any sort of issue here, and we think that the cost per landscapers is they've had several years notice this is coming. We've had a rebate. The county will have a rebate. They can spread these costs over multiple years, and it's not all that big a cost to landscapers. And on the other hand, they're the health costs and the amenity benefits.
So I wanted to mention that we did ask our town contractor for what it would take to fulfill the requirements of this potential ban for next fall. Our current contract runs through 2024, right? It's kind of a 3-year period of time, or yeah, is it 3 or 5 year period of time, Todd, that we have contract with you? 3? 5, excuse me. So that ends 2024, but what we've been given is a quote of approximately $50,000 extra that would cost to ensure that they are converting to electric battery-powered leaf blowers. The stipulation, though, is that they need to add a second truck. So I want everyone to understand that the loudest part of the process, because now you all are hearing through it, is that vacuum that's attached to the truck. And that is not part of this ban, right? So that vacuum will still, you'll still be able to hear it 3 streets over. And in order to make sure, because there are expectations on the part of residents that these leaves are picked up in a timely manner, there would need to be 2 trucks running through the town and 4 people with the battery-powered leaf blowers. So that is the $50,000 differential in order for the town to fulfill this requirement. It comes to about $50 per home. So just to make sure everyone's aware. Yes. Well, okay, make sure that.
I'll follow up with a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Can I just follow up on the John Hughes issue? I've talked to Hughes many times and known him for decades.
Yeah.
He's on the far end of what landscapers feel about the power of blowers that they need.
What does that mean, far end? Sorry.
He believes to move heavy wet leaves, you absolutely have to have a big, very powerful, very large gas blower. Other contractors are very much in the other direction. Is okay, you can use a more normal gas-powered leaf blower or an electric leaf blower, and it'll do the job. It'll take a little bit longer. You may have to get a guy raking to move some of the heavy sludge, et cetera. But John is, many others don't share his opinion. And I think the higher bid that he gives is due to the fact that he wants to have the 2 guys who are walking along with the truck using the heavy blowers, or having the option of using the heavy blowers. I mean, much of the fall, his using electric powered and lighter blowers has worked, but he's very concerned with sort of meeting the schedule requirements, going through the whole town
It's true.
in a week without being able to use his big heavy blowers.
Did you have?
Yeah, I
a question?
could.
Yes.
The model you have, first, if you've updated it, could you please send it to us? I could take a look at it. But also, have you gone over it with any landscaping companies? Has anybody validated or looked at it?
Yes, not the whole thing, but many parts of it. I've been over it with Paul Golub, who's pretty active here, and Mark, can't remember his name, who's got a big company, and in general, most of the sort of unit costs and 2 minutes to do that and 1 minute more to do that with a how much time does it take to refill the gas tank, and how often do you have to refill the gas tank, and how does the charging work, et cetera. All of those details have been sort of vetted by them.
How about the number of batteries that are required, and and how long they'll last for a heavy duty cycle during the day in the fall? Not the big new batteries. There's relatively little experience on that. The very largest new batteries, backpack batteries weighing 40 pounds or so, there's little contractor experience with them. And basically that's all analyzed as a function of what California has found, and it's a function of sort of capacity and the number of watt hours that are sort of embedded in a battery and how rapidly you use that up. What are the contractors using now with the backpacks? I thought those were pretty big batteries, but you're talking about even an extra large battery?
Yeah, ones that will run the very largest electric blowers for an entire day
Those are relatively new. Those are at most 2 years old. As the sort of electric market has been growing, they've been moving up in terms of the power of the blowers and the capacity of the batteries to. I mean, that had been the big objection, is you couldn't, with the electric blowers, you couldn't run them. A contractor couldn't run it anywhere near the whole day, and you need.
Right, that's right. That's what my recollection from the last time we looked at this.
Yeah.
So I was trying to get a sense of your comfort level that issue has been resolved, or is it still out there?
It's been resolved, but not via input from contractors. I mean, California's looked at it quite thoroughly.
Did you speak with Ray Brothers?
I talked with not for 2 years or so.
Okay, because they do the cleanup work, collection work for Somerset. So, and there's a comparable kind of pricing as well to what we've been.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, was there anything else that?
That was my question.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, but thank you very much for your work on that. by the way.
Stuart, I
There
did,
follow-up question? Oh, go
I
ahead.
did want to. When was the last time you checked the price of the commercial leaf blowers? The reason is I did a Google search. The most expensive one I could find now was about $1,300 for the biggest one that I could steel make
With a battery or not?
with battery.
With a battery.
Yeah. But I imagine those prices of those things are fairly like the handheld ones are coming down substantially as they penetrate.
It's the battery
Yeah.
that really costs the big bucks.
Yeah.
And there's one battery that's $1,600 now. So. Yeah.
Did you have a follow-up question for Stuart?
So we hired Nicole Hughes here in town.
Yes.
Somerset has Ray.
Yes.
I know, does Ray's have the same objection as the gentleman that Hughes were mentioning?
The question is Ray Brothers also feeling as if that they're under the gun in terms of time and therefore need to work quickly and as a result get some, really powerful equipment here? I don't know the answer to that question, but maybe Todd might or Stuart. Okay.
No, I have no idea. No idea.
Okay. Okay, I just want to give Wicca a chance, and there is someone online. I want to provide an opportunity there. Wicca, if you could, oh, sorry. Is that microphone on? I just want to double check. Oh, good, thank you. Hello.
Short person. I'm Wicca Davidson. Hi. This is the first time I've stood here in a really long time. I have a question about this. I don't have an opinion. I have a question. And my question is, in a year, Montgomery County is going to do this ban,
Yes.
correct?
2025.
In 2025. So almost, well, we're almost at the end of 2023. So it's basically a year and 2 months or something. So this is moot. We're just saying do it earlier, or that's what the thing is, because it's going to have to be done. And why? What is the argument to not just go ahead and do it?
So, not so much an argument, but just a
I mean, I don't mean
communication.
argument like let's have a fight about it. I
No,
mean, like
no,
what
it's
is a position?
It's really because there are the equipment that we've put apart as a town partial year ban is a subset of the equipment that's been banned or will be banned at the county level. So there's a little bit of now from a blower standpoint, it won't make that much of a difference, but there's a little bit of a communication issue. So we would have to be very, very vigilant in terms of, yeah, I understand that you're getting communications from the county that it won't be banned until July 1st, 2025, but the town has banned it as of 2024. So there's a little bit of that, like, how people may not recognize that there's a shift. So that burden ends up falling to the town staff for that 3-month period.
The burden of what?
Enforcement.
Isn't there a way to have the ban early and have some leeway where, like, we're not going to like go out and like slap people around if they, they haven't got their equipment yet?
Of course you could, but that'll be, again, communication back to the residents, because if residents are feeling as if it's a ban, and they call the town office and say, hey, I've just recognized this company is doing something. And then we're like, oh, it happens. And, the county is there. Eventually everyone's going to catch up. I don't think that's going to be very responsive to residents.
Okay.
So that's where we're kind of.
I just wasn't quite sure what
that's
what's going on. I mean, why?
I'll offer one other concern, at least expressing my own view about it. I think that first, I think there is validity to keeping things simple. So if the county is going to have this happen in 2025, why should we wish to do it earlier? And to make a general point, we're all on the same page in terms of wanting to get rid of gas powered leaf blowers. So no one should question that, right? And we're literally talking about a period of
3 months.
Well, it's not even, I will actually assert it's more like 6 weeks, because very few landscapers come through the last 2 weeks of October. It's too early. Nobody does it from mid-December till the end of the year. So it's basically 6 weeks. And I think you made a very good point that a lot of people have already shifted. So the actual number of gas-powered leaf blowers is already declining even during the fall. And I expect, because people are looking ahead to the ban, that more of them will probably switch anyway. So we're looking really at kind of some fraction of gas power of contractors for a 6-week period. And the question is, in my mind, one, is it worth the effort just to go through all that? But the other reason I would say that gives me a bit of pause, and why I was curious about the work that Stu's done, is that we don't have the small scale landscaping companies here, and I think from thinking, because I once ran a small business, the longer I have to use a piece of equipment before I have to buy the new equipment, the easier it is on me economically. And so if you're a landscaper and you're looking ahead to the reality that you must convert by 2025, but I have a gas powered leaf blower that I bought last year. I'd like to use it for a couple of years before I have to junk it. If you force me to junk it in 1 year, well, then that's an economic burden. I can't say how much it is. But that to me is, you're asking for what are the alternative ways to think about it. That's one that comes to my mind.
The other aspect, and I'm not sure, Rick, if you were in the room, about like the.
I don't have a huge position about this. I was more confused about what the actual big issue was.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to mention that there's added, complexity in that Lawton Center, Elm Street Park, and Chevy Chase Elementary School, they can continue to use gas powered leaf blowers. So there's all this messaging that needs to go out to residents that we just need to be clear and keep saying it. So whatever that message is going to be, full year ban, but yet, we're going a little bit great, but it just needs to be really, really clear, easy to understand. Is there someone on the line as well? I want to give an opportunity if because I see there's four folks, so I wasn't sure if the fourth person, yeah. If there's a question, comment, concern of any kind that person would like to state, I want to give the audience to them.
Sure, it's me, Mark. Thanks for hosting this. I appreciate the opportunity to express a view. So yeah, I don't know if you all saw it, but there's certainly a very good article in the Washington Post about leaf blowers. I'll put it in the chat just on the off chance that you hadn't seen it. I think it very convincingly makes the case that the time is long past overdue for us to take this action. And, just in listening to the analysis, it all sounds reasonable to me. The only thing I might emphasize, and I'm not sure if you guys looked at this, but a couple of things. One is these seem like these are regional, companies. They seem big enough that they're probably not just operating in our neighborhood, right? They're probably in multiple neighborhoods in our geographic area. And I don't know, it seems like the writing's been on the wall for a while now between the district and various neighborhoods around here in Montgomery County. The talk has been in the air for years now about banning the gas-powered leaf blowers, for all the reasons that we know, that they're bad. And I telework full time here at home, and let me tell you something is when that shift came up for when it's legal for them to use the gas-powered leaf blowers, they went right back to it for the landscaping companies around our house, and it's a huge pain. It's a huge inconvenience, and I didn't realize how much I appreciated the ban until they started using them again. It's a real burden, and I never appreciated the action that we took to ban them, as much as when we got them. So I don't know. The reason I mentioned that they're regional companies is those costs are probably spread over not just our neighbors, but all the neighbors, right? So the cost per household might go down, especially when you consider a lot more customers are paying for that. And with respect to the leaf collection that happens at the sides of the roads, I guess if a town, if we decide that we really need that service, hey, and it still needs to be gas powered, well, it's that much less. I'd rather have half a loaf than nothing, right? So I'd if that's the one thing that's creating a lot of noise, hey, at least that's only once in a couple of weeks that comes by, or once a week that comes by. So I'm fully in support of doing this as quickly as possible. I think the time's long past overdue, and we've all been knowing we're heading this direction for a while now. So thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Todd, have there been any additional comments submitted to the town office since the first list that we received?
There have been, and my apologies. I was going to ask Lily to update that spreadsheet today and send it to you, but I didn't get to it. I can do that. We can send you an updated list tomorrow. Most of the ones we got we had about 7 or 8 additional comments in support of the ban in 2024.
Okay.
But I can ask Lily to update the spreadsheet and send it out to you tomorrow.
No, I just want to make sure that we're all up to date on the information. Okay.
Can I just make a couple?
Of course.
Okay. Chris Files. I don't think I stated my name earlier. I did contact the head of, it's not landscaping, but the head person at Chevy Chase Elementary School about their leaf pickup. And he told me, Jordan, that they rarely use gas-powered leaf blowers except on the parking lot. They use a tarp and rakes and electric blowers for the grassy areas. That's one thing I wanted to mention. In terms of the big blowers, I'm in line with if we have to put up with Hughes using gas-powered equipment, so be it. I know the village does allow pickup with gas-powered blowers. I meant to check in with them to see what they're doing about that. I apologize. I will follow up on that. Yesterday, I was coming back through Elm Street Park. I don't know if anyone heard. They were doing a cleanup in the park. I know they don't do it every week. They had 3 incredibly loud gas-powered blowers, and some kind of machine. It was also running. The noise was deafening. The dust, because they were using these blowers in a small area, was incredible. So I think a regular gas-powered blower is 200 miles per hour. That's the speed of the exhaust. So I have no idea what that was, but all those beautiful little kids were on the playground right next to that equipment. So that was really concerning to me. A couple other quick points. Confusion. I think right now the system we have on a partial ban is confusing for residents and landscapers. We have a partial ban, and then we have to say, I've approached landscapers, you can't use this equipment, but you can use it in the middle of October. It's very confusing. So I think we'd be clearing up confusion, not adding to it. I also apologize. I meant to ask the town office for an update on the residents who've written in. I checked in with Lily. I think as of Monday, there had been 37 people who had written in, and I believe 90% plus. Only 2 were against the ban. 3 jurisdictions already have this ban in place now for 2 years. It can be done. DC, Somerset, and the village of Chevy Chase. It's happening in communities all across the country. Evanston, Illinois. California is banning all gas-powered landscape equipment as of next year in the state. And I think, Stuart, 50% of the landscape equipment market is now electric. I mean, it is happening. The writing's on the wall. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chris. Does anyone else have questions? Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Following up on what Mark was just saying,
Yeah.
one thing that resonated with me from what Mark was just saying and what Barney had just mentioned about the schedule that we have given the big town contractor for leaf pickup. It's not written in stone. We can change that schedule. If it's too difficult for them to use an electric system eventually to do it, we can change it. Also because, as you may have noticed, there is less of an interest for people in raking their leaves and getting rid of them, but people have begun to actually leave them or compost them, which is something that we are encouraging in any case our residents to do. So those are 2 things that I think we can think about if we are concerned about the onerous burden on the town contractor.
Sure. Thank you. Hello, Sima. Did you want to make a comment about the public forum that we're having around the expansion of the ban on gas-powered leaf blowers? Hello. Oh, you're on mute just in case there you are.
Hi, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I support the full year ban. We have noticed a really significant and unpleasant uptake in noise since October 15th, obviously with the onset of leaf season, as well as the expiration of the ban. And it's been, just constantly, gorgeous weather outside, wanting to go out for a nice walk. And then the other day, wanting to go out for a nice walk on a gorgeous, 65-degree and sunny day in the fall. And I literally encountered 4 different sets of gas-powered leaf blowers on the walk, which made it just like a smelly roar of a walk. It was just so unpleasant. So that's, my personal interest. And more broadly, of course, I think that's my concern from a selfish perspective. More broadly, I just think it's so clearly the role of government to protect workers from really dangerous labor practices and to protect individuals from environmental externalities. So it just seems like exactly what there's just no need for super fast zooming over every lawn. This is an industry practice that's developed, and it's I think it's clearly government's role to try and control it in a way that protects workers, as you know, as you've seen in a lot of the documentation we provided. Audiologists say there's just no question that all of the workers who are stuck using these things will have hearing problems in 20 years, and in the current system, we'll probably not have health insurance to cover it either. So those are my thoughts. And I will say I would also really be glad to participate in any publicity, leaflet handing out or yard sign erecting. So anything I can do to help my family and I would be happy to participate. And I also would strongly recommend, hello. And I would also strongly recommend some kind of periodic like enforcement threat, because I have seen many. There's a gardener on my street who regularly, and gardeners on the street behind us who regularly use gas-powered leaf blowers, fully aware that they're against the rules. Sam, please behave. Sorry. So that's all.
Thank you, Summer. Thank you. Is there anyone else on the line? No? Okay. Hi, Eric. Are you here for the gas-powered leaf blower van? Oh, okay. All right. I wanted to give you an opportunity if you wanted to comment or ask a question or. Thank you for coming early. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, again.
Sorry, can I ask one question?
Of course.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, I know we offer, as the town, we have like a program where we offer a rebate when the companies switch to electric devices. Is there anything that if other localities do the same thing, is there any way that we know, could a company that operates in 3 localities be picking up 3 different subsidies? Or do we say, no, you already got yours from Somerset or from DC or whatever, and you're not getting ours?
Yeah. So first of all, I just wanted to clarify that our rebate program ran for 18 months, but it's no longer in place. And there were many companies that took advantage. I mean that in a positive way, that availed of the opportunity to get a rebate. What we allowed for was individual owners to themselves get a rebate based on their own personal purchase of an electric or battery powered leaf blower, or they could combine with other residents towards saying, I'd like my landscaper, I hope you're okay. I want my landscaper to be able to collect a bunch of rebates up to a point, and then use that towards the purchase of equipment. That program is not in place, but there is a program that is going to be put together by apparently March of next year, but it's unclear whether that deadline will actually be made. I don't know if companies decided to pick up I don't believe that the Somerset program was run at the same time that our program ran. So I don't think, now, I don't know what happened in DC, if people came from companies availed themselves of a DC rebate, if there was one, and a Chevy Chase one. I'm not sure I care as much, as long as it was some, towards the purchase of equipment that allowed for that business to continue and feel good about the prospect of expanding their line of equipment. But the county is going to be handling that in the future. So I don't have any details of that. Neither do they at this point. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Great.
So in the county, I was wondering about this. So the county rebate program still has to be designed.
Not designed yet.
But the earliest it would be in place would be in March of next year?
The earliest that I understand that they're even submitting an idea for the rebate program will be March of next year. It's not that it would be adopted by
okay.
then.
So we don't know when it would actually come into effect.
Correct, because I think people now are trying to meet the July 1st, 2024. You can't even buy the equipment. So, but I don't have any dates at all in mind.
I don't think DC Somerset, I know the village did not have a rebate program.
Yeah, I don't know if.
Somerset or DC.
Yeah. Great. Unless there is anything else, I think we're adjourned. Thank you so much for your continued work and vigilance in moving this forward. We will put this on the schedule for discussion and a vote, and I will just kind of take a break until 7 o'clock to officially start. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you for hearing us.
Yeah, let's open this thing up. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. So we're going to open up with the treasurer report for October 2023. Rich, if you'd like to. Is your on? Okay.
Thank you. Good news is we're pretty much on track on our expenditures and our budgeted operating revenues and expenditures. There was one item of note on the financial report. In October, we received tax receipts of $212,116.14. Normally, we receive between 50 and 90,000. The reason was the state got a big, and we get a distribution from the tax from the state, and the state evidently had a significant anomaly in the receipts of delinquent taxes for this month. And so we are the benefit of that. And that big increase was from their receipt of delinquent taxes.
I guess perhaps that answers the question I had about it. That was very good news to see that.
Yeah.
Say the obvious. But I was concerned whether, because we have a series of reimbursements, whether this would mean that we'd have a smaller one coming up in November.
No.
This month.
This
The
is
answer is no. So this is delinquent. This is that other category of
This is
delinquents.
the other category.
So this could be over $100,000 of found money that we had not anticipated, so to speak.
So to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Good news.
Very good news.
Just to give you a magnitude of it, the state got $7 million in receipts, delinquent receipts this last month. And to put it in perspective, we got 212 of that. So, and Gaithersburg got 250. The big cities got a lot, but because we're the town of Chevy Chase and have that we got a significant portion of that. Many of the smaller cities in the state got $20,000, $30,000. So
Yeah.
we're quite
Good
lucky.
position to be in.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Any questions anyone has? Thank you. So we'll move over to the town manager's report. Thank you, Todd, when you're ready.
Sure, thanks. I'll just review some of the staff functions and initiatives undertaken over the last month. We've assisted in engaging in the Corso Chevy Chase and Bethesda Market Park projects, both of which will be discussed later this evening. We communicated with Purple Line officials to obtain additional information on specifications for the alignment adjacent to the town. This issue will also be discussed later this evening. We engaged with Maryland Department of Transportation State Highway Administration and submitted a letter to them requesting a meeting to discuss the prospect of widening the westbound approach of Bradley Lane at Wisconsin Avenue. We do have a meeting scheduled now for December 5th to talk about that and other issues that we need to address with SHA, especially ongoing issues with respect to maintenance of state roadways that border the town. Staff organized and attended a council work session on land use committee tasks, priorities, and support. We also worked with Backyard Bounty on a replanting plan for Rosemary Triangle Park, and we identified possible locations for a bench. And this issue will be discussed at the council's December meeting. We continue to manage town park and waterway improvement projects, stormwater management improvement projects. We addressed the median cleanup on Connecticut Avenue, which has been completed, and a sidewalk accessibility issue on Connecticut Avenue and Bradley Lane, which we're awaiting SHA review and approval for. We've also overseen sidewalk grinding in multiple locations in town to prevent trip hazards, which has been completed. We oversaw the installation of an additional storm drain by the county, an additional storm drain inlet on Maple Avenue, which has been completed. WSSC water main water main replacements and repairs on Thornapple Street and Leland Street. We've rebid the household organic waste collection contract, which is maybe surprisingly to me, generated a lot of interest among prospective bidders. We've had a lot of questions submitted in anticipation of the bids being due on the 17th. We oversaw the completion of the FY23 audit, which I've distributed to the council, and I'm pleased to report was another clean audit. And we provided project support to town committees. Also notable is Tolbert will be overseeing the planting of our fall, we'll oversee the fall tree planting next week, and we're planting 30 private trees and 45 public trees.
Yes.
And staff has also reviewed and discussed town election regulations and procedures with Irene and Ron in anticipation of a council work session on November 15th. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Todd. I want to just express my thanks for the sidewalk grinding thing. It makes a huge difference to walk around. It's been very, very good. And congrats again for the audit, and I'm happy about the trees. I have a quick question on the December 5th meeting. Will that also include an update on the East-West Highway signalization project?
I was intending to ask them that at that meeting if we don't hear from them before that, but I could always contact Derek separately on that issue, because I understood that we were supposed to have, the plans were supposed to be developed, and another group meeting was to occur prior to Thanksgiving, which we haven't heard anything about. So I could certainly request, I could either wait till December 5th and ask him what the status of that is, or actually send an email separately on this issue to ask him what the status of this particular plan development is. So I if there's any preference on the part of council, I can do either. But if there was if we anticipated having something provided to us for review and rather fully developed, and having another group meeting about this, which we expected to be on the week before Thanksgiving, then we're talking pretty soon. So I can certainly follow up with Derek separately on this matter and let you know what he says.
I think that makes sense.
I think
actually.
so, especially since state delegation and Councilmember Friedson were part of that meeting. So
And we were promised it before Thanksgiving.
we
so.
absolutely were promised the full design. So
Will do.
great. Thank
Sometimes,
you.
excuse me, just to follow up,
course.
the December 5th meeting is basically on Corso. Is that what
No.
no, I'm sorry, misunderstood.
December 5th meeting is with SHA officials to discuss the prospect of widening Bradley.
Okay.
Approach to
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't.
as well as some other maintenance issues we have with SHA, ongoing maintenance issues we have with them. Yeah.
And what about the subsequent meeting with SHA regarding Corso? Any further? Not with Corso, but with SHA regarding signalization at Connecticut.
So there was the meeting. Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I was
Go ahead.
confused.
I know there was a first meeting which we were inadvertently left out of.
Right.
So my
Yes,
question is, when
yes.
will there be a second meeting to which we will for sure be invited to?
Yes, we do not know that right now. We're not certain. We'll get to this a little later, but Corso's first resubmission is due today, or was due today. We haven't received any revised application yet, which will include responses to our questions. But this whole signalization issue is proceeding on a parallel, but not necessarily synchronous track. So the SHA has requested certain information to be provided by the applicant based on the last meeting they had, which we were omitted from. The SHA requested additional information from the applicant, which I assume is being provided to SHA, and then SHA will respond, and we'll understand more of where that stands, and obviously, hopefully, be included in the subsequent meeting. But I haven't heard any update on that yet, Barney.
Can I offer a comment to the council about the widening of Bradley, which I want to make sure people who are start.
Of course.
When we were working on the Bethesda downtown plan 6 years ago, we were looking closely at trying to get a widening of Bradley into that. One of the things that was uncovered actually by Chevy Chase West, but they made it available to us, is an agreement that was signed between the country club and the State Highway Administration. I think it dates back to the late 1950s. But at that time, Chevy Chase Country Club wanted to put up some amenities that would invade the right-of-way that the state had on the south side of Bradley Lane. And there are formal legal agreements that the state said, okay, we'll let you do it, but anytime that we need to get that land back, we will take it back, and there'll be no compensation. So that agreement, as far as we know, and our attorney, Francoise Carrier, looked at it quite closely, believes it still is in effect. So what we're talking about here is not at the corner of Connecticut, but at Wisconsin. But as we know, there's certainly very little that the country club is using on that land anyway, so they may not care. But it is to say that there is strong legal grounds that there should be ability to widen the Bradley as necessary to lengthen the turn lane that would turn south onto Wisconsin.
Well, it feels
Right.
like now is a good time to address that because isn't the club looking to do some re-landscaping, some reforestation?
Not in that particular area in terms of the site plan that we were provided or the variance. But yes,
But-
since we're talking about it, let's see, let's put it all together. And that's what spurred the
Exactly.
request. Yes. Yeah.
And I will share with the council the response I got from Derek Gunn, specifically related to the letter that we sent asking for the widening. He did, I'll forward it to the council for your review, but he does say that they have evaluated the feasibility of developing a project to widen MD 191 Bradley Lane to extend the westbound left turn lane by approximately 200 feet to West Avenue, back to West, between West and Wisconsin. And he said, our review of available plats revealed that the right-of-way line along the south side of Bradley extends approximately 23 feet from the roadway center line. While the right-of-way appears available at this location to consider widening, there are 3 utility poles located about 5 to 7 feet from the edge of the roadway. These and potentially additional poles would need to be relocated back by about 5 to 7 additional feet by the utility owner for a project to advance forward. And then I responded to him, am I reading your message to mean that you are proceeding with this project and the relocate and coordination with Pepco to relocate the utility poles? And the response was, let's have a meeting and talk about it.
Okay. We will learn more. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for the manager's report? Okay, so we'll open it up for public comments. Other than the public hearing that we're going to be having in a bit, I'm opening this up if anyone has any public comments. I don't see any. Okay, great. Thank you. So now we're going to have a public hearing, 4119 Rosemary Street, tree removal appeal. Ron, would you like to start proceedings?
Yes. So this is the tree removal appeal 4119 Rosemary. The hearing will begin with the presentation by the applicant. Following the applicant's presentation, the council members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant or staff. After that, anyone else in attendance that has an interest can make comments or ask questions. Then the applicant will be given the opportunity for a brief rebuttal. The record will close. The council will deliberate on the request and entertain a motion to either grant or deny the request. If the request is granted, please note that the decision is not final until it's written, and that takes about a week to 2 weeks. So with that, we'll ask the applicant to present. Is Mr. Keating here or someone?
Ron, can I interrupt? Ron, can
Yeah.
I interrupt 1 second? The agenda says this item is going to be heard at 7:30, but the notices that went out to abutting and confronting say 7. Are we okay to proceed at 7:13?
Oh, thank you so much. I just hadn't looked at the time, so thanks for that. I'm happy to delay this until 7:30 and we can move on to other discussions. Okay, thank you, Todd.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
I appreciate that. Okay, let me see how we're gonna do this. So let's go through the updates. Do you want to do Bethesda updates or do you want to go and talk about Corso first? Your choice. All right, let's go with Corso. So the discussion at hand is that, as Todd mentioned earlier, is that there's going to be an updated or resubmittal. It's supposed to occur today. We'll probably get it by the end of the week. The topic at hand is the signalization, what the plan would be for signalization. The developer does support the concern and question that we had to create a situation so that there would be a left-hand turn option exiting Corso. There was a meeting. Unfortunately, administratively, we just weren't in a part of that meeting, but we heard about it after the fact. It was just an oversight. And I guess at that meeting, and Todd will can fill us in as well. The intent is for the developer to provide additional information that backs up for SHA to understand, the traffic volume and, does it fit the standards for signalization and ensuring that everything ticks and ties. So that information is to be provided. I think it's already been assembled by the developer so that the SHA can make a decision. What's a little unclear to me is if SHA is looking to, if you will, check a box or and by having this information, or are they truly waiting on this information in order to bless the idea of having a left-hand turn out of the development? So
I think that to add to that, Irene, if I may, I think there was some determination initially at least that the statistics, volume, speed, crash data, et cetera, didn't lend itself to a traffic signal warrant. Nonetheless, the SHA is open to an argument by the applicant that a signal is needed there for pedestrian and bicyclist safety based on the goals of Vision Zero. And so that's what the applicant has been asked to submit to the SHA is additional information on how this signal will improve pedestrian and bicyclist safety at this potentially heavily used intersection. But I believe the data that the applicant initially provided did not meet the traffic, did not warrant a traffic signal at that intersection. But I believe the SHA is very much open to and understands the interest and among all parties to have the signal there, and can justify doing so by looking at pedestrian and bicyclist safety and the goals of Vision Zero.
Thank you.
I think the other point that we want to make sure is emphasized, part of what's unfortunate about her not having been at that meeting, is that we're looking for an activated signal. And the fact is that the workers coming and going, of course, so by and large are not going during working peak hours. So there really shouldn't be a material. Obviously, what SHA was legitimately concerned about is slowing up traffic, especially during rush hour use of Connecticut. But an activated signal, often used by cars that are not there during rush hour, we would think would be a substantial mitigation to their concerns. So we'd like to make sure that that's made clear that to us would be part of what we find.
Absolutely. And I actually spoke to the applicant after that meeting and impressed upon him the need to ensure that SHA understands that. He said that was discussed, but it will be made clear.
Okay, any questions?
Well, the other key thing we're looking at in this revised plan will be stormwater management. We were concerned about it, but we were very pleased that the county found their plans to be we were pleased they were found to be inadequate. We were pleased that the county took the same position the town took, which is that they were inadequate. And we didn't have to carry that water ourselves. The county has done a very good job. I'm sorry, so to speak. Yes, exactly, so to speak. So in any event, we'll be looking closely at what the response is by Corso to the county's concerns, and could possibly lead to a greater level of retention of water on the property, basically slowing up its flow into the mains on Meadow Lane.
So there will be this first resubmittal today at some point, and then at the end of the month, I forget the date exactly, will be the final submittal.
Final resubmittal is 11/28, and then agency approval letters are due December 18th.
Okay, that was 17. Okay, yeah, so things will move forward from there, but the initial indications that they're responding to all of the questions, at least that the town has. So that's great. So are there any questions on the project or the schedule or anything like that? So part B is the discussion about updating our building code ordinances to effectively, because this is a lot that is institutional use lot, and the intent here was our code is for residential buildings, to discuss the option of given all the areas in our code, there are certain chapters that would not be applicable given the size of this project and the type of project. So specifically chapters 4, 5, and 28 of the town code. So I'd like to open it up for a discussion in terms of whether we would like to update our code to reflect that when there is a lot within the town borders that is currently institutional use, that there wouldn't be applicability of our residential building code. Anyone would like to?
Well, I think to clarify for any listeners, we would be reserving the right to regulate. It just that the residential code wouldn't apply to that
The
particular
residential code
property,
wouldn't,
right?
right? Yeah, there's only certain chapters that we're
Right.
discussing when it's an institution.
Right.
Yes, thank you.
I think these changes that we've are in the packet make a great deal of sense. I first like to thank you, Ron, for having been so careful a drafter to put that together. That was a lot of work. But I think the spirit of it is that clearly there are parts of our code, as you said, that are not applicable. And the town is on record of supporting Corso. Where really it's inappropriate to now say, wait a minute, you've now got to comply with a code that would essentially prevent them from going forward with a project that we've long endorsed and felt was an appropriate use of the land. But I do want to stress that one of the other really good features about these proposed changes is that it makes it clear that being exempted from the code is solely when the land is used for institutional purposes. So if down the road, there's always a worst case example, and one of them is that for whatever reason, Corso doesn't go forward. If that land were ultimately to revert back to being residential, then our code would for sure apply. And that actually was an ambiguity in our code that wasn't so clear. So we've actually in a certain sense tightened up our code to make it clear that any land that becomes residential is subject to these codes. So I think that's something that's good that's coming out of it. I also want to stress that it does not involve the tree canopy. So that that part of our code is not being affected here.
That's right. Any discussion, questions, concerns?
I'll move that we introduce it and have a public hearing.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great. So we're going to introduce this ordinance next month and have a public hearing on it. Thank you. Let's keep going. So the next topic is Purple Line. So there's a few people coming in and I don't know if which part they're for, so I'll let them come through. Okay. Hello, welcome. So the topic at hand here is that now that construction is in full swing with respect to the Purple Line, there's a retaining wall that's being constructed. If the lots are, if those people who are living on the north side of Elm Street, there's a retaining wall and then there's a sound wall also being constructed. It's various, depending on where we are in Elm Street, it's either constructed or not yet there. And there's of course the train tracks and an ornamental fence that will eventually be put up. And then we have the Capitol Crescent Trail, which then leads up to a ramp that then crosses over to a pedestrian bridge. On the other side of the pedestrian bridge is Elm Street Park. So now that all of this construction is occurring, there was a concern or set of concerns from the neighbors who live on Elm Street about two basic concerns. One is you call it a security concern, and the other is a more visual fishbowl concern. So there were questions posed about the possibility of people that would climb over the fence that would exist between the train tracks and the Capitol Crescent Trail, scale the walls, the retaining wall, sound wall, which will be up 7-8 feet high. Yeah, and then be in somebody's backyard. So there was overall security concern about that. And then a secondary concern about, given the height or the topography of the lots, the homes are where they sit on their lots are a little bit higher than the train tracks. So when you're thinking about people who are going up the ramp to cross over the pedestrian bridge, there's a concern that people can just look into backyards. So a little bit of a fishbowl effect, if you will. So lots of photos taken. Thank you, Barney, for going out there and keeping all of us abreast of just what's going on in terms of the actual construction, but really a back and forth to understand a little bit better from the Purple Line outreach team on, what sort of protection, visual protections will be put in place, and what we might be able to do from a town perspective to encourage more vegetative screening and things like that, so that, given that it's almost 2024, we're not looking at a Purple Line operation until 2027. There's an opportunity here for people to take advantage of our native canopy tree planting programs and other tree planting programs to just have that visual barrier there that might also serve as a secondary security barrier. So that is, I don't know if anyone on the line is living on Elm Street, would like to further comment. I'm happy to hear you out as well, to make sure that I've represented the concerns expressed by the residents thus far. But what I wanted to do is just kind of open it up for thoughts on the council as well about the, now that's becoming a reality, So first, is there anyone on the line that is on Elm Street or is particular would like to comment about this, or in the room? I don't know who's, does not sound like it. Okay. So yeah, I can open it up for your comments.
Decided I would go over and look too, but I went behind Jim Roy's house, which is the
Yes.
last house on Elm Street.
Before Elm Street Park.
Before Elm Street, and the bridge actually stops to the right of his house, about 2 houses up. And then there's a ramp that comes down
Yes.
right there, and it's right at his backyard and right at his eye level. So there, it made me aware that, that's a concern. But as I understand it, there's going to be a glass barrier on the bridge. Clear barrier.
Clear plastic
Clear
barrier.
plastic.
A
yeah.
10-foot.
Yeah,
10-foot
right.
high.
It's gonna, to keep people from jumping
From
over
falling
onto
on
the
catenaries.
catenaries.
Yeah.
And as I was looking further down, especially at Barney's photos, the walls are going to keep people from moving over from the tracks to people's backyard, which, by the way, there's going to be less pedestrian. I mean, you're not going to have pedestrians as close to the houses as they were on the trail. And so we never had any problems of people jumping over.
Correct. Yeah.
When it was a trail. So
Right.
I think these walls are going to be completely sufficient to keep, people from
The security.
security aspects of it. But I think there is a visual problem. And looking at at some of Barney's photos, I noticed that some of the houses had some very effective plant screenings. And what I would hope we could do is to think about extending our private canopy program to allow people that need screening along Elm Street to essentially participate in some kind of a shared cost program to allow them to put more screening in their backyards in terms of vegetation.
That's a great idea.
So, and I think that would pretty much, that's about all you're going to do, because I think we've gone to the extent that we can to get any improvements to the walls and to the other aspects of the construction. So I think that the next thing to do is to get the homeowners to put some vegetative screening up.
Okay.
That's my thoughts.
Thanks, Rich.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I will point out, we have our tree canopy program.
Yeah.
So we ought to make sure that everyone knows they can plant as many canopy trees to begin with. And we've added fir trees to the canopy list, so they can put up screening of fir trees. That's 100% paid for by the town.
Right.
So some good communication about that. But I think to your good point, what we've seen is that a lot of residents have put up a thick, literally a forest of bamboo, which is really, and that there are certainly places where they may want some other kinds of vegetative screening, which are not canopy trees, because they take a long time to grow and may not offer much cover lower down. So I think some program where and I think we all feel this keenly, that these residents, obviously, we've always said this, that going back into previous town councils, we were not going to support any legal action opposed to the purple line, but we cared deeply about mitigation of the issues on behalf of the 36 residents. That was the principal view that we've had for 8 years now in the council. And that's what led us to get the increase in the noise wall, and which the town is paying for. But I think that supporting some program for additional vegetative cover in some cost-sharing way makes a lot of sense. And I like your thought that we ought to really hear from the residents. Because I don't know, I could, theoretically, you could say, Y% up to X dollars, but I don't know what Y and X are until, residents actually come together and say something about what they might want, what makes sense. So I think encouraging that conversation with an expectation that the council is going to be receptive, in my mind, would be a way to.
I actually was going to ask Todd a question when he talked about the private canopy program. How many were on private property?
For this fall,
Yeah.
for this fall, 30 on private, 45 on public.
You know how many of those were on Elm Street?
Tolbert, do you know?
They tell that it was what?
I mean, we planted 17 in north side of Elm Street properties.
Front or back?
The program has started,
Oh,
mostly the back.
Mostly the back.
For the upcoming canopy over
There's one, this gone.
I would also note that, the council had agreed to change our native canopy tree planting program to a private native tree planting program, so that we do now offer evergreens and things like that. So it's not just canopy, it's evergreen type screening trees as well. And that would include,
Arborvitae.
Arborvitae.
So, yeah, some that grow tall, yeah. Maybe we don't need.
Yeah.
That's the residents.
Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps a letter, to the residents along that stretch, reminding them of the program, letting them know of the current date of operations, and that planting something or working towards planting something in the spring, might be a good idea. So to be very mature by the time operations begin. So I do want to add too, because something in the back of my mind with respect to the pedestrian bridge and the plastic, 10-foot whatever wall. I don't know if there is, maybe not, but I don't know if there's an opportunity to put a film that has there's various designs out there. You could still see through it, but it's kind of a blurry.
Distorts the image.
Distorts the imaging, that still provides a safe place. It's not like people are in the dark or something like that, but allows, and even you could see legs, but you don't see faces or, heads, if you will. That if that's something that we could potentially discuss with the outreach team. I don't know how receptive they would be to such a thing, but I'm just thinking of a film that would be over the plastic.
Yeah, it's going to ask. I do know, in prior life, we had the same kind of situation. And the county did not want to put other than a clear barrier up for security reasons.
Yeah.
They wanted to be able to see everybody on that bridge and if anything was happening.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
any screening was not, they just wouldn't go for it because of the security aspect.
We'd only be seeking it on the south side. And
Yeah, but that's the only side you see.
Right.
Nobody can see from the bridge crosses the tracks like this. So it's just that one side.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, nobody can see from that other side. But, why not ask? If it doesn't hurt to ask.
The purple line is really long. I can't imagine that we have the only spot where this is an issue. And I'm just wondering, in our meetings with the purple line, there are these CAT meetings, I guess.
Yes.
Have we heard anything more about this issue in other communities, or do we know what other communities are doing? Because it would be great then if we could band together and ask the purple line for the same thing.
Sure.
Several years ago, there was a very active group that was basically spearheaded by Edgevale in East Bethesda, and we joined, and we all came together and talked about a lot of these issues, particularly about landscaping. So I'd be happy to get back in touch with a woman who can't think of her name offhand, to see whether there's any interest in bringing that group back together.
So what I can do is prepare a draft letter, send it around and get your comments on it and see if we can't get something out before the holiday season.
Yeah, the other reason why it's very timely is that now that the retaining wall has been completed, everybody knows that there's not going to be any further construction that's going to come into anybody's backyard. Obviously, a major concern about doing any landscaping is that you put it in, but then the workers are tramping around on it. But that's really, I think, finished now because the retaining wall is in place. So,
Tilbert, is the deadline passed for putting in the orders for spring?
Spring now.
Okay.
Next spring. We passed the deadline for fall.
Yes, but if we were to put together a letter, is there a deadline like December 15th? If people want to.
We make it in the spring, it can be, I'd like to get started earlier this year, so maybe March 15th of March or March 30th would be a deadline.
Should request.
Not too late. Not too late at all. Yeah, not too late.
Spring of 24.
Yes,
Right.
okay. All right, thank you. Great. All right, thanks, everyone. So let's now go back to the public hearing. Sorry, we are 8 minutes past there, but we got through a good part of the agenda. So I think where we left it was if there was anyone representing, I know you're here, but are the Keatings here? Oh, you were all here the whole time. I did not know that. I apologize. Otherwise, we would have gotten straight in there.
Hi, and also this is.
Sorry.
Sorry, Pat. This is Lane Comcast Engineering as well.
Elaine, thank you for calling.
Okay, I don't think she can hear you because the microphone's over here. If you would, yes, thank you so much.
My name is Pat Keating. I'm the contract owner for 4119 Rosemary Street. And that's Lane from Cass Engineering, who's developing the plan for the redevelopment of that property. And she can speak in detail as to the stormwater management plan and why we need to remove those trees. But essentially, we felt like that was our best option to elevate the backyard and bring the water to the street, to the public right of way, and water that we can't treat with our stormwater management devices. There is poor soil that we discovered with our boring and our engineering tests. So, and further, she can speak to how we developed We wanted to keep the driveway in place, the apron in place. And so our best option was to remove those hemlocks to save the oak on the other side. And then we're going to provide a number of replacement trees, and we'll continue to work with the neighbors to place those trees so that it's good for everyone, so to speak.
Okay.
So that's it in a nutshell. Lane can speak to how the plan was developed if you like.
Absolutely. So do you all have the plan in front of you, just our site plan that we attached with our tree removal appeal package?
Yes.
We reviewed them.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. So exactly like Pat described, so there's a single family home on the lot, and the project is proposing a new single family home. And so in terms of the main development constraints on this lot, one is existing trees, and two is really the drainage approach, how to handle runoff and stormwater management and addressing the town's drainage ordinance. So if you're taking a look at our site plan, early on in the design concept, there is a 19-inch red oak. If you're looking at the house from the street, it's on the left side of the front yard. It's a beautiful, full canopied, healthy red oak in the front yard. It's a very prominent tree on the lot. And that was identified early on in the concept design for protection. And so in terms of how we chose to site the house and locate the driveway, our number one priority was to save that tree that's on the left side of the lot, which is why the driveway was selected to be located where the existing driveway apron is on the right side of the lot. On that right side of the lot, more towards, definitely along the side property line, but more towards the back of the property, are the three hemlocks that were denied for removal. So these are a 14-inch hemlock, a 9-inch hemlock, and another 9-inch hemlock. They're about 5 feet inside of the property line. And they're essentially functioning as screening trees between the subject property and the neighbor's property. They don't have too many big branches. And there's some other trees on the neighbor's property as well that kind of share that screening responsibility. So in terms of priorities, when locating the driveway, we chose to prioritize the large canopy oak tree over those three hemlock trees. Part two of the picture is the drainage approach for this property. In the existing condition, the front yard more or less drains to the street, but the side yards and the backyards drain onto the adjacent properties, onto the neighbors' properties. Mostly we're concerned with the drainage through the backyard onto the properties behind this lot. One reason for that concern is based on a site visit and based on county topo. The rear yards in this area are very flat and do not appear to drain well. That's an existing condition. A second existing condition is there's a low point on the property in front of the existing garage. There's an area drain over there. We were not able to determine where that area drain release is, but that area does overflow onto the downhill neighbor's property. So that was another area that we wanted to address with our drainage approach. Our infiltration rates, in terms of the soils encountered on site, were very poor. And so even the smallest type of storage device, these mini R-tank storage devices, are not feasible for this project given the infiltration rates that were encountered. So we don't have the opportunity to use storage devices like the R-tanks. We can use a very small amount of gravel drywall storage volume towards kind of reducing the impacts of runoff onto the neighbors' properties. At that point, our best option to address the runoff for this property was to raise the rear yard, I think up to about 3 feet higher than existing grade, so that that backyard and the entire property drains to Rosemary Street. So this drainage approach not only, it essentially eliminates the runoff from this subject property onto the neighbors' yards, which is the existing condition. So they're going to see an improvement from the existing drainage pattern. Raising the rear yard and providing those retaining walls necessitates the removal of those 3 hemlocks, because the required elevation change is too much for those trees to survive. And so, but that drainage approach, raising the rear yard, and allowing that the entire property to drain to the street, we're able to design that grading so as not to impact that 19-inch red oak that was prioritized for preservation in the front yard. So given the series of development constraints, we feel like we came to a solution that prioritizes the largest canopy tree, the most beautiful canopy tree on the project, on the property. And Pat and his team is planning to mitigate for the removal of those 3 screening hemlocks by planting 3 arborvitae on that side of the property, as well as 9, let me see the species I have.
Hornbeams.
Hornbeam.
Yeah, 9 hornbeams along the rear property line to provide some screening there as well. And yeah, the combination of the location of the driveway, is necessary to prioritize that red oak, and the raising the grade is really necessary to address the existing drainage issues in the area and to address the drainage ordinance for the town's requirements.
Okay, thank you. Was there any other person that wanted to talk on behalf of the applicant? I just want to make sure. Okay. Are there any questions from my colleagues? Okay. Are there any questions or that from the audience or people on the line that would like to that have any questions or comments? Yep, you're welcome to come up to the. Yes, please.
Okay.
Oh,
Anyone
no,
online?
sorry. I apologize. I didn't hear you well. You have to speak into the microphone only. Or you can take it out, yeah.
And if anyone online would like to speak, please use the raise hand function and let us know you're waiting.
Hi.
If you
good
could
evening.
introduce
My name is
yourself.
Robin Feller.
Thank you.
I'm at 4117, so I'm on the east side of the property under
Excuse me,
consideration.
you have to hold the mic up close to your mouth.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Robin Feller. I'm on the east side of the property at 4117. I have lived in this home for 21 years, and I have enjoyed the canopy trees. My 2 sons have enjoyed the canopy trees. I find them to be personally very beautiful and much beyond a screening function, as they have been referred to. I think that they are tall, beautiful, majestic trees, and they add a great amount to our quality of life and to our block, our neighborhood. We call ourselves the Tree City USA, and we are now here talking about raising 3 beautiful canopy trees. And at a personal level, I find it even heartbreaking that we're having this discussion. And I find it to be a very difficult precedent if it is approved. It has been denied at this point. If the appeal is approved, I think it is a very difficult precedent for the town to approve the removal of canopy trees. The canopy trees are determined to be healthy trees, 85 to 100% canopy effect. So they are not simply screening trees, they are canopy trees, and the rules of the town say that they cannot be removed. That is the town ordinance. Those trees are not subject to removal. So in deference to the builder who is here, the applicant who wishes to construct a new home, a choice was made of where to construct that new home. And that choice was made to construct it on this existing lot that has poor soil drainage apparently and has canopy trees. So the builder made a choice to use that lot. And I believe that consideration should be given to the town ordinance and to the priorities of the canopy tree. Because the builder chose a lot knowing that those were the constraints and has chosen to build there and to take down the canopy trees. Those trees have been there since we purchased the home. I lived there with my two sons. I believe that it would take years upon years upon years for new plantings to grow, maybe even beyond my lifetime, to get to the same effect that we have now. So I don't find it a simple solution. It's not an easy replacement to put in, simply say, we're going to put in a new tree, although I do appreciate the effort that will be made if this goes through to do that. I do appreciate that effort of replacement, but I don't think it's an equivalent. And I don't think that we can have an equivalent. I just don't see that that's even possible to have an equivalent. I wanted to go to, so just in line with this, the staff report, number 6 on the staff report. It says the extent to which no alternative to canopy tree removal exists that would allow the proposed development, construction, or land use otherwise permitted under the town building code. The response is the applicant addresses this extensively in his letter of appeal. I don't see any alternative plan that was proposed. What we have here is a side load garage and a need for a turn radius. That is essentially the issue. The 3 hemlock trees are obstructing the turn radius to get to a side load garage. My question is, has it been explored as to other options as to where to put the garage? Currently, the garage is a 2-car garage at the very end of the driveway, and it works. So putting in a side load garage is part of the reason, or large part of the reason, because a turn radius is needed so that the car can turn around and come into the side 2-car garage and then a 1-car garage in the back. So I would assert that the primary reason here to remove the hemlocks is to accommodate a side load garage. And that was in the early literature. It was detailed that that's needed. So that's number 6 of this report, where it says the applicant addresses this extensively in his letter of appeal, and that's the alternative build and design plans that would not necessitate tree removal. I'm not seeing any alternative design build plans that would help us to not have to have this drastic step of removing these beautiful trees. And then number 8, the overall effect of the tree canopy of the adjacent properties, the neighborhood, and the town. The applicant acknowledges that the removal of the trees will affect the immediate tree canopy. The applicant asserts that these trees do not provide a wide canopy and are functioning as screening. And I would dispute that, as I have up to now, to say that these are healthy, beautiful trees in my estimation. And the town arborist had concurred with that, and they were given 85 to 100% canopy effect. So I think it minimizes the the argument here to call them simply screening trees when the town has determined that they are screening trees and the town has determined that these are the rules. You cannot take down a canopy tree. And I'm not seeing that a justification has been made. I feel that the builder made a choice to choose this lot, and these were the limitations of the lot. If there was a soil issue and there's canopy trees, then that has to be incorporated into the plan and into the design. And again, I think it's a precedent issue, and we would all be very, very, very sad. When I've spoken to my neighbors at various points, people just shake their head and just cringe to think that these trees are going to come down. And it's just a heartbreaking situation for us. So I would ask you all to consider, our town manager has already denied this request, has already denied the request. It is consistent with the town ordinance to deny the request. And I would like for this appeal to be denied.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? Also online, if you do, please raise your hand.
Yes, my name is Penda Hare.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Can-
I was looking up at the screen. I apologize. Yeah.
Okay, let me know if you can't hear me.
No, it's all good.
My name is Penda Hare. I have lived in the town since 1990. I live on the corner of Rosemary and Maple, so just right down the street from Robin, and walk past her house every day, and walk past the house next door where they are proposing to build this new mansion. I just looked on Zillow and it's listed for $5.2 million. It's designed to go way out as far to the property on every single side. And that is what our canopy trees are competing with. It's not about the drainage. There is no, Robin lives next door. She's not getting flooded right now. It's going to be the drainage problem, if there is one, is going to be created by the building of this huge house on a relatively small lot. And while I know there's a lot of building in the neighborhood, and some of that is great, but it's not great when you have to cut down canopy trees that have been designated for protection. And I also don't think that the argument that because there's an oak on one side that needs to be protected, that these trees have to be cut down on the other side. There is a driveway now that goes all the way to the back of the property, and there is a 2-car garage at the back of the property. And all of that can take place with these trees between the two houses, between the driveway and the house next door. But what they are trying to do is build another garage at the front of the property. And as Robin described, you would then drive in the driveway and run over where the trees are now in order to turn into this new garage that's going to be attached to this new, very large house that is probably too large for the lot that they are trying to build it on. And so I would just second that there's a precedent here of whether we're going to protect our trees or whether we're going to protect the developers that want to build right up to the maximum, because they will keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I first met Mr. Keating when his people were on my deck in my private yard. And I called up Dave, the permit person, and told him, and he stopped them from cutting down a tree that was in my yard. And they were going to cut it down. I don't think they had any permit for it. They were just going to cut it down because and so his justification for cutting down my tree was that he wanted to build a fence along the back, and he wanted to build a fence right through the tree that was partway on my property and partway on the other property. And lo and behold, when he was told he couldn't cut down that tree, he found an alternative. And I think that there are alternatives here that could protect these trees and protect the neighbors from from losing this magnificent resource that our neighborhood claims to protect. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, Ruben, I saw that you had your hand up briefly, but I wasn't sure if that was an error or you did also want to make a comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Chair Rubin, 4131 Leland. I would really have liked to have seen this this permit and this variance. I'm so sorry. I'm just looking into this. Could you please post the site plan? Could you do that?
Well, you mean post it, Joe, meaning as part of the agenda?
Well, I mean,
Screen
no,
share.
I mean, can you screen share it?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe page 22 of the council package would be good, Todd.
Yeah, I can do it. Sure.
Yeah.
What are the dimensions of this lot? It looks wide. I've looked at Google Earth on this.
105 feet wide.
105.
So it's wide and shallow. Yeah, and for a typical R60 here.
Yeah,
And these-
107 deep.
Oh, I had it at 7. So 105 by 107? Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
That's, yep.
No, not, keep going here.
Keep going, Dad.
I have more than a little experience with hemlocks, but I don't know these trees. Are they tall? They look full. They look sort of fulsome at breast height. Is that correct?
They're 14 inches, 9 inches, and 9 inches in diameter, excuse me.
Can you go back to page 9, Todd, please? That's the photo of the 3 trees.
I'm going back to Google Maps for a second here because I can actually see the trees.
There you go.
I think. Yeah, I am looking at them. Okay. No, that's not them.
We have those on the
Are they
screen.
bushy? Are they bushy down low at eye level? Or are they leggy?
They're on the screen now.
But they're taller than that. That doesn't show how tall they are.
Joe, does that answer your question or were you looking at something?
Well, right now I'm looking at the trees. Let me get back to your, let me get back to the meeting here. Oh, yeah, that helps. That helps. Hey, Tolbert, back me up on this. I've had hemlocks on a few properties of my own. And as they get older, as they get taller, they tend to, the lower stuff, 15, 20 feet even, as they mature, tends to die off. And they don't provide much of anything there, not even a screen. And the Tolbert, do I have hemlocks on the maple side of my property?
Yeah.
Do you recall?
The answer is yes.
At what stage do they become a hazard? I mean, mine are hazardous. Tolbert, I know you want to take them out and I won't let you, but at least a few of them have fallen since, before I was here. One of them you did take out. It had fallen. It was a leaner, kind of a widowmaker on the maple side. I mean, my only point here, and I'm abstinent on which way this goes, is that in my experience, hemlocks are not great trees, especially for a canopy tree. They're a pretty good screen until the bottoms start dying off. But I believe they outlive their usefulness, and I'm wondering what the useful life of these trees are, even as a canopy tree.
Joe, this is Todd. I don't think Tolbert has evaluated the trees. He's determined that they're healthy canopy trees. That is what their condition is currently. We can't surmise on what their condition will be in the future. So we have to take the merits of the case as they are presented tonight.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. That's it. I just kind of wanted to know the facts on the ground.
Thank you, Joe. Is there anyone else, either online or here in the room that would like to? Yes, please, Eric, if you'd like to come on up.
Keep that screen up. I'm Eric Murtaugh. I reside at 4111 Leland Street in the town. I'm also on the town's land use committee. I think it's important when looking at this property to understand a little bit of the backstory that the current owners who reside in the home have been there many years, and the existing house has approximately $150,000 of structural damage to it. So looking at the economics of it, they did make a decision to put the house up for sale to the public to see if someone would be interested in doing this versus saying this is a new home site. So there was a sincere effort over 5 months to see if someone would be interested in taking this on. No one was willing to do it. In order for anyone to go inside the house, they had to sign a legal waiver because of the insurance for the property and for the brokerage firm in case part of the house collapsed while someone was touring the home. So to understand at least the circumstances for how we got to this place today, I think that should be noted. Secondly, as you can see in the photo, there is obviously a wide driveway that's non-pervious. There's a 2-car garage at the rear of the property. And I agree, I don't believe there's at present a drainage issue to the east. I don't know what the situation is to the south for the house on Stanford Street. I do want to point out that I think the reason you don't have that drainage issue is there's a very large intake in front of that garage door that you can't see well in that photograph, that, as was mentioned earlier in the presentation, I think by someone here, it's unclear where, maybe it's Lane, the civil engineer, that it's unclear where that drain daylights. So with this new home, the stormwater management plan cannot utilize that existing intake. So with that intake going away, something of significance needs to be done to the topography of this property. Number one, with the understanding that this really is a new home site because of the severe structural damage. And number two, because the applicant does not have the ability to utilize the significant drain that's in place now that's taking all the water that it's being described. And so I think when you look at those two factors, you look at the hemlock trees, if there is a way to provide alternative screening, and I believe the applicant is open to increasing that amount, he has made a proactive effort in engaging neighbors on the block to approach him in advance of this meeting and well in advance of construction to see if any type of measures can be done to help address any concerns. And I do want to mention that I was part of the engagement with Ms. Feller, and there was an active dialogue to try to hear out her concerns and to remain open to suggestions to work together towards a mutually agreeable solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else on the line or?
Can I speak one more time?
Yeah, I just want to make sure everyone else so that you will have a chance to respond for sure. But I just want to make sure everyone is. Yeah, Wicca, sorry.
I am.
Okay. The question was if Eric Murtaugh is the agent for, and the answer was yes. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Sir, if you,
I definitely have a series of questions, but if it's more appropriate to wait until
Yes.
after the rebuttal, then, okay.
Pat, this is Lane.
Hi, Lane.
I would love to speak drainage piece whenever you want to tap me in. Just let me know.
Okay, yeah, I was going to speak to the fact that we looked at this property a number of different ways, remodeling the house that's existing, of course, the garage, the placement of the driveway, the grades. So we've looked at this a number of different ways. We feel like this is the most responsible plan for the long term for that property. And I appreciate Ms. Feller's comments. We've talked to Ms. Feller, the Eshelmans. We're going to work very hard to address the concerns of the new development. I realize it's very difficult in the beginning. We've done a number of projects in the town. I feel like successful projects. If you look at the last project we did at 4212 Stanford, that backs up to I'm sorry, what's your name? Pardon?
Ms. Hayer.
Ms. Benahair's house. It's only 3 years. Those trees are very tall. They're taller than these hemlocks. And depending on the species and the placement, it's just a far better and more responsible plan to put new trees in. I'm not going to say anything as to the hemlocks. I just think we can improve that. And as part of the plan, and that's what we're proposing tonight. And I fully understand in the beginning, it feels like that can never happen. But I think our projects are testament to the fact that it does and it can. So that's just what I want to say. And I think Lane wants to speak as to how we got to that plan. One last thing on Stanford Street, I did build a house at 4117 Stanford Street, the Brown residence. And there's a torrent of water running behind those properties. And especially during these large rains. I don't know how much of that comes from 4119 Rosemary, but I know that after we're complete, there will be no water coming from our property contributing to that existing condition. And that's a condition that I can testify to from firsthand experience.
Thank you. Lane, did you want to also say something?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I just want to speak to the civil engineering side, and I apologize if this gets a little bit into the weeds of design. But just to paint you a picture, so the low point on the side of the property adjacent to Ms. Robin Feller's property, there's an inlet there, there's a drain that Eric Murtaugh also referred to. And that elevation is 369.4 feet. The driveway, the existing driveway elevation near the front of the property is 359 in the back and 360 in the front. And so in terms of just a responsible civil engineering design, we try and get the driveway to drain to the street. That is not possible with the driveway on this side of the property without removing those hemlocks, regardless of the width of that driveway. We need to raise the property at a minimum of 1.5 feet in order to have positive drainage of the proposed driveway to the street. So that's kind of design constraint number one. And then design constraint number two is we are balancing the urban forest ordinance with the town's drainage ordinance. And so it's a difficult balance, and you know, obviously that decision is not up to us, but we're trying to present a solution that resolves the drainage issue, removes the impact, the drainage impact to the neighbors, and prioritizes the red oak that's in the front yard over the hemlocks. And I understand that that's not a perfect solution, but it is our best design solution for addressing both the urban forest ordinance and the drainage ordinance, considering that we don't have the help of underground storage facilities like our tanks and that type of thing because of the soils.
Thank you. So I suspect we open it up for our discussion and or your question, the questions. Yes. Got it. Stephanie, you had some.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start things off. Lane actually just answered probably the key question that I had, which tied into criteria number 6, which is what I'm most focused on right now. And so I'll just start by kind of giving more of a comment than a question. I think that what we should be concerned about here is not so much are hemlocks nice trees or not. Do people have emotional attachments to these particular hemlocks? I think that our ordinance with strong protections for the tree canopy speaks for itself. That is a priority in Chevy Chase. It is something that we definitely try to protect. The way the process works is that if any given tree checks the boxes of a canopy tree, then the town staff cannot approve the removal. It comes to us. So it's not, I just want to clarify that process-wise, it's not like these owners are getting a second bite of the apple. This is the way it's supposed to work. We're supposed to be the ones to finally determine the balancing between legitimate development needs that are permitted by the town code and the preservation of certain canopy trees. So what I am focused on, though, is this number 6, the extent to which no alternative to canopy tree removal exists that would allow the proposed development, construction, or land use otherwise permitted under the town building code. And certainly the beginning of that says no alternative exists. And the fact is that in the universe, there is, of course, always an alternative. You could always build the house differently. You could put the driveway somewhere else. You could decide not to have a driveway. You could decide to make a permeable driveway. There are all kinds of things that you could decide to do. But the second section, the second part of that sentence says that would allow the proposed development, construction, or land use otherwise permitted under the town building code. And so that's what we're balancing here, is the fact that people bought this property, they want to use it and develop it in a way that is certainly legal and that is permitted under our town building code. And so what we have to do now is figure out whether the record has been presented to us in a way that satisfies us that there is basically no reasonable alternative to this plan. And one fact that so far I find pretty persuasive is the negative flow of water backwards into the property and into the area behind the property where there is apparently a rivulet rather than towards the street. And although I am concerned that when I look at the new building proposal, the driveway goes the whole way over to those trees. That tells me initially that, you know, maybe the real concern here is that they want the garage to face a different way and the driveway goes the whole way over to the trees. On the other hand, if what you're saying is that the real concern is grading and that regardless of what that garage and driveway look like, the trees would have to come up because the whole back area has to be regraded, that's different. But I am a little bit concerned that the record here is not entirely coherent on that point. And I always get a little bit concerned, although I am a new town council member, if any litigant, any applicant says this is our only alternative. I would like to hear more about what other plans and alternatives were considered and rejected for this to be the only alternative that remains. Thank you. Please.
Questions?
Yes. It just turn it on if you would.
Maybe this goes to the town office, but town management, but help me out here understand this drain that is there and currently apparently doing a good job draining a lot of the water from the property, but cannot be used going forward. What's that about?
We don't know where it daylights.
Dave can speak to that.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is Lane with
I'm
CAS
sorry.
Engineering.
Lane, hold on just 1 second. Dave Walton is
Dave,
gonna,
Thank you.
we'll ask
Oh,
you.
sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, what I know I actually got from speaking with Lane, I guess when they came out to do the survey, they identified this drain in the driveway. They could not find where it outlets. It's possible that it's possibly tied into the sanitary sewer, which is not something that's allowed. I looked at the county storm drain maps, and there's not an obvious storm drain that it could connect to. And we can't find anywhere that it daylights. So it's honestly purely a mystery and we don't know. But under the town's drainage ordinance, any runoff from new impervious surfaces is required to be retained on site. So even if it was a functional drain that they could otherwise reuse, they couldn't, under the town's ordinance, continue to use that drain. It would have to be removed, or a variance from the water board would be necessary.
What is the, okay, I get that. And I can certainly understand the concern about not knowing where that water goes and whether that ends up making something worse in some other property or goes into the stormwater management system. But am I understanding it that with the new system, with the grading, that basically the water is just going to come back onto the street?
So approval of the drainage plan is probably going to be subject to a town water drainage variance, in addition to approval of a county stormwater management plan. As part of the county's plan, they likely will require the installation of dry wells that are not likely to function very well. And so when those dry wells fill up and surcharge, the proposal will take the water that overflows out of those dry wells and have it drain across the yard and out to the street.
So there'll be initially, the water will be stored on site up to some level. And then after that, it overflows and it goes off onto the street.
I guess pending design work that hasn't been done yet, approval by the county, and then subsequent approval by the town.
Okay. With this, can I continue? Sorry.
Of course.
How high will the retaining wall be that has to be built to set the new grade?
Yeah, it looks like they're between 3 and 4 feet. And they vary in height depending on where they are. And the one on the side where the trees are,
Yeah, that's what
I think is at maximum height about 4 feet, and it tapers down to about a height of 1 foot toward the front of the property.
All right, so 4 feet, that's fairly substantial, actually. Awesome. About going to the issue of the trees. By the way, I respect very much your point about the balancing, so I appreciate your stressing that. Help me understand a bit more about the hemlocks. How high are they, and what is the, I guess, the diameter of their branches?
Tall.
I've seen them, and I've actually looked at the site, but I can't, unfortunately, the picture cuts off the top. I can't remember how high they are.
About 9 inches.
Tolbert, can you go to the microphone, please? Can you also speak to in extenuation of Barney's question, one of the factors the council considers is to the desirability of preserving a canopy tree by reason of its age, size, or outstanding qualities, including uniqueness, rarity, or species. If you could speak to that as well, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Todd. There's 2 9-inch diameter trees. This is about 9 inch. And there's one 14 inches. That's about 14 inch. There may be 30 to 40 feet tall, 35 feet.
Okay.
They're planted fairly close together, so they're not, it's like a whole mass of foliage that goes up. As far as uniqueness, they're not specimen hemlocks. They're healthy hemlocks, they're not hazardous. And they're fairly common in the town. A lot of people, they're all planted. There's not really, the Catoctin Mountains have understory hemlocks, but as far as the woods here, they're all planted. There isn't anything that really grows by itself without people planting them.
Yeah.
So they're, as far as uniqueness, they're not unique because there's quite a few of them, but, and they're not specimen. They're healthy trees. That's
Okay.
why we're here.
How old are they?
It's hard to say. These are probably maybe 30, 40,
Okay.
somewhere around there.
And then the last set of questions regarding the new plantings that are being offered. That's arborvitae, is that?
Arborvitae.
Okay. How rapidly will they grow, and when do you think they might equal the size of the current trees that are there?
Depending on what type of arborvitae you plant,
Arborvitae, okay.
they can grow very quickly if you plant, like some of the varieties grow 2 feet a year. The space that they're proposed in is kind of tight. They maybe need to give a little more space somehow, whether it may be to, maybe move the driveway over a foot to give a little more space there for the proposed trees.
The trees we planted at the top, obviously, so the retaining wall would be further east than these trees that
Than the
we
trees,
planted,
yes.
right? Okay.
So it'd be tree, then retaining wall and driveway on the other side.
And
So
how-
it'd be
how tall-
driveway, tree, retaining wall.
How tall are the trees when they're planted?
Well, that's up to, the owner. You can get 15, 20-foot trees if you want.
Okay.
But then there's a root space problem too. So probably there, it's maybe 10 or 12 foot you could maybe squeeze in.
Okay. All right. Those are my questions. Thank you.
I actually had asked a question that I wanted Mr. Keating to answer, but then we just kind of slipped past it. I would like you to answer what plans were examined for the site of the house and water drainage that were rejected, and why were they rejected as entirely insufficient alternatives?
With the water drainage, I follow Lane's recommendation. And I relayed to her my experience with building the house on Stanford behind and the river that would run through there. And she relayed the fact that her soil test came back so that we wouldn't be able to capture all that water on site.
Lane, I'm sorry, did you, have you all looked at replacing the soil?
So, so in terms of providing stormwater management devices or retention devices on site, those devices need to be placed in native soil. They can't be placed in fill soils. And so so we're very limited to the soil infiltration results that we received on site. We will be providing stormwater management to the county's requirements, but the town bases their drainage ordinance requirements on the infiltration rate, and the infiltration rate prevent us from providing storage facilities on the project that meet the town's requirements. And so those types of underground storage facilities towards the town's ordinance they're just infeasible for this project based on the town's drainage ordinance requirements. So just to speak a little bit about the existing drainage pattern in the area. So the backyards in this area, we really have two sources of information. One of them is our topo, where we go out, we survey the property, and we find out the elevations, and that gives us a picture into the existing drainage patterns on the subject property. We do a site visit so that we can see it in person. We don't survey all of the neighbors' private properties. that's not a part of the development process, and it's private property. So on the adjoining properties, our source of information is the county's 2-foot contour topographic records. And what those tell us is that across the 3 adjoining backyards that border this subject property, the elevation is almost the same across all 3 backyards, meaning that if we drain water to those back neighbors' property, it doesn't have an exit point. So we need to prevent additional water from the subject property draining towards the back of the lot. We don't have a lot of options for reducing the existing drainage flowing onto those properties because we can't use those underground retention strategies. So that is that brought us to the solution of raising the grade in the backyard and draining that rear yard to the public right of way, because that reduces the drainage impact to the neighbors. And then just to touch on your question about the drainage picture over by the existing garage. So that it's an elevation game from our design standpoint. The drainage ordinance wording says that we have to maintain or reduce the pre-development runoff rate onto adjoining properties. So in the existing condition, the area in front of that driveway goes to an inlet, and that inlet, we don't know where it goes. There's no curb through drain to the street. And that elevation of that drain is lower than the sidewalk in front of the property. So it might tie into sanitary. That's not an unheard of situation. It's definitely not allowed. And that when it rains really hard and that area fills up, that water is definitely draining onto the downhill properties, which are 4117 Rosemary and 4117 Stanford Street. If we don't raise the elevation of that point, then we can't change that drainage pattern. And if we raise the elevation of the point high enough to get it to the street, it's going to be a change in elevation that's too great to save the hemlock trees on that side of the property.
Got it. I'm sorry, Mr. Keating, I interrupted you to ask Lane. Do you have anything to add?
I think she captured it.
Okay.
We have a wide and a shallow lot, and the house is going to take that shape. And so it's not my first choice to put in the walls. It's very expensive, but it seems to be the most responsible for the long term for everyone around it. And I think new trees is equally a good plan. It's not the I think long term the community will be well served by that plan.
Thank you. Just a moment. Go ahead, Barney.
Yeah, I have some questions about, I mean, again, it's related to the drainage, and maybe staff can speak to this. I don't know what our ordinance says about having water drain into the street. It just says that we have to contain water on property, right? And then the second is, what can you say about other properties in the area? And are you aware of other properties in the area that have the similar issue with poor soils and drainage, and what have the solutions been on those other properties?
Sure. Yeah, the town ordinance, I guess, technically requires the certain volume of stormwater to be retained on property. I guess the drainage to the street comes into play as part of the town's water drainage variance process, where one of the factors that the water board looks at is, does the plan that's presented minimize or not have a negative impact on neighboring properties? And so they've interpreted that to basically make findings that if you can get drainage out to the street where it can be conveyed into the storm drainage system, that's a preferable solution than draining it, through rear yards onto adjoining properties, where it can lead to problems with flooding of adjacent properties. So I know specific to Rosemary Street, there's a house across the street that just finished being built. It also had very poor soils, probably similar to the results for infiltration that were found on this property. In that case, the water board did approve a variance, and as part of that approval, they conditioned the installation of a storm drain extension that runs from the side yard of that property through an adjoining property and then connects to a storm drain inlet in the street. There is a house on Stanford Street where a variance was approved, where the board required, I guess, a change in the grade in order to drain, the front half of the property out to the street, where the pre-construction condition was similar to this, where the entire property drained to the rear properties. And there was a house on Thornapple Street a few years ago that was similarly conditioned as part of the variance process. So what they're proposing is consistent with what the water board has approved in other cases.
But by and large, I mean, this is constructing then on this site is a multivariant situation because they're requesting a tree variance. They would have to get a water board variance.
Correct.
Because they would not be able to retain the water on the site.
Yeah, based on the low infiltration rates, I think it's very likely that they'll have to come in for a variance as has been presented in the record.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, one other follow-up question. Thinking about the comment you made, Tolbert, about how you'd be a little bit concerned about the space given to the new trees being planted. It seems a little bit narrow to you. And looking at the plan, it seems to me that since the side-loaded garage is at the front of the house toward the street, that actually where the new trees would be planted is beyond the garage and what really is just a open drive space, I guess. I mean, it's not that area doesn't seem necessary for getting into the garage. It just seems like another open span of impervious surface. Second garage in the back. Oh, there are going to be two garages.
Yeah.
I thought that was referring to the old garage. Well, that begs the question of why two garages? And I guess going to the question of Tolbert, I'm trying to think that if we were to consider the variance and we care deeply about the replacement trees and wanted them to have the maximum chance to be successful and grow large, is there enough space there to really give us assurance that that would happen in the current plan?
I think what you're getting at too, Barney, is you don't need this space back here
to be as wide as it is to begin with, but I hadn't appreciated there were two garages. That rather astonished me. So I just took that on board. Thank you.
I think you need maybe at least a foot there to give enough space.
How much space would you recommend in order for there to be adequate width there to really feel comfortable the trees would take root and do well?
I don't know what width here is now.
The whole setback is 2 feet from the property.
Yeah, so
No,
3 feet.
Yeah.
I read it. What did
I had a question. I'm so sorry. And then I'll definitely are there any building variances envisioned with this site plan?
We haven't gotten the construction drawings,
Right.
but we don't believe there will be.
There will be any. Okay. Thank you. That was so yes, you had.
But I'm saying you cut that.
Sorry, either
Narrow this down, so these would go ahead and change.
one way or the other.
Right, that's what I said.
I just wanted to add to the discussion about whether there's enough room to plant replacement trees along the eastern side of the property. And this has come up in our prior discussions with the applicant, the builder. My understanding is that the wall will be approximately 2 feet from the property line, at which point there will be a fence. So the only width, from my understanding and what has been explained to me, there will only be a 2-foot space to plant the trees, which seems very small to me in terms of them being able to grow to the same height.
Mm.
And that specifically was expressed to me, and a question that was proposed was, will the replacement trees fit and survive in that confined space? Because the question had been, there's very limited space between the new retaining wall east side and the 4117 property, my property, and the replacement fence. My understanding again is that that's all of 2 feet to put in the replacement trees. And I just wanted to go back to the question that Stephanie, I believe, you talked about a balance in terms of, I think, point number 6. As when a homeowner can build on their property and utilize and enjoy a property. I just would like to clarify if this home has actually been purchased at this time, or if it's still a prospect. My understanding is it hadn't gone to settlement. So I think it's a little bit premature possibly to get into that balance question, because it's actually not owned, as I understand it. Maybe Mr. Murtaugh can comment on that, but in terms of the balance you suggested, that sounded like it applied maybe a little bit more to when someone is the homeowner. And at this point, I don't think the sale has gone through.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any other comments before we
There were questions.
go into questions before we go to deliver? And because the site plan is on the, not site plan, just a sketch is on this screen, I can't tell if anyone's raising their hand online.
It's up to us now.
Okay, it is up. Great. So let's open this up for discussion here.
Just to be, Ron, we closed it, at this point, we closed the public discussion. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, the record's closed. Council can now deliberate.
Can I
Go ahead.
Well, again, it is a balancing act, and I do appreciate the stormwater management aspects of this thing and the need to raise the property. My only concern really is the viability of newly planted trees, which is, as has been pointed out, it doesn't look like there's sufficient space to actually have a sustainable growth tree there that's going to last for 15 or 20 years or so, whatever is it. And I would like to hear from staff what would be the appropriate distance that's needed, because the wall would then need to be moved. And it looks like it's got about, what, 2 feet? I know you took the schematic off. I couldn't, maybe 2 feet from the side of the garage to where the wall, goes out, the retaining wall goes out and then starts. And it looks like it's about 2 feet. So I think we need to know how much space is there, whether or not anything can survive that would be a replacement, that would be, a replacement to the hemlocks. That's
Right. And I
I'm not
believe,
really-
Tolbert, you said it would be nice if it was a little, another foot or so.
I would, is that, how do you get that foot? Is my question.
You have to change their plans.
You have to put the wall in, but I'm asking, can you put the drawing up again, Todd? How
Page
wide?
22 of the PDF.
22,
Yeah.
20, 22.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it has to come into, it has to come in another foot. If you brought how one, is that 2 feet? So that they could run the legal. So you could run the wall, you know, up to here maybe. That, and that would give you the 2 feet to
Where's the property line?
property lines over here.
Right there.
So if you move this, is that 2 feet? Will that give you enough space to put?
The wall of that garage is shown 5.2 feet from the property line. And the retaining wall is 2 feet from the property line, so it's
It's
3
another,
foot.
another 2.5 feet, 3 to the
It's
garage.
3 feet between the edge of the wall and the wall of the garage.
So you could move the wall.
No, but the garage, not the driveway. The driveway doesn't go as far as the garage.
What? Yes, it does.
Sure it does.
It goes beyond the garage.
Beyond the garage.
Yeah, it does.
This-
That's my
this
point.
is
That's my
a
point.
garage. What we, you know,
The
that.
measurement to the
The
garage
one
is
tree
irrelevant.
that's exceptions here is beyond, is about here. So if they extended this wall to here, is that, this is a total question, is that space between the property line and there sufficient to put in
The arborvitae.
arborvitae or
Yeah, you have to
reasonable?
remember, the wall's solid on this side, but it's open space on the thin side.
Right.
No, I know that. That's what I'm saying. So you open it more.
Yeah, I think you need a little more space between the wall and the property line.
Right. That's what we're saying.
That's what we're saying. Yes,
Are we saying we want to stipulate a bigger
yeah,
Yes.
version of what's planted?
that's what I would stipulate.
That's what you would say versus,
Agree.
Yeah.
okay. Any other initial comments?
Yeah, I guess this has been a really interesting discussion. I certainly appreciate hearing very clearly and great feeling the views of the neighbors. And just by way of background, I think normally when we hear variances, more often than not, the neighbors are in line and there's not a problem, and that makes it much easier to potentially approve the variance. When neighbors are opposed, we double down and take things really seriously and want to think things through very carefully. So please respect that, I'm sure. I think the principle to me is that, and this goes regardless of whether the home is settled or not, that the property owners have the right to enjoy and earn the value of their property up to the extent of the town ordinances. So if the ordinance permits them to build a house of a certain size, then they can do that. People may or may not like that, but that's what the ordinance permits. And clearly the value of the property reflects that. If the home had to be smaller in order to be built, then presumably the property will be worth less. So there is a cost of not going forward with this plan, whether the home is settled or not, but it will be felt by either the sellers or the buyers in some way. And I think so the point of balance, which Stephanie highlighted, I think is really crucial. And the balance here is between our water ordinance. And I think we've heard clearly that, and it's still rather astonishing to me that what might otherwise have been a serious water drainage problem is not because of a drain that mysteriously takes a lot of water and mysteriously nobody knows where it goes. But that drain cannot be used going forward. So there has to be some other solution to the excess water. And again, with all due respect to the concern about trees, when the tightened ordinances were put in 2008, they were one of the most salient reasons why they were so supported by the community was because of water runoff concerns. The neighbors were really concerned about the large homes that were causing flooding in the basements of the neighboring properties. And so in my mind, when I think about the balance, caring about the water runoff that could ensue because of no longer being able to use a drain that's currently there is a heavy weight in my mind that I take into account in my own views. I haven't heard of any alternative that is better than saying the water has to be able to ultimately, as sort of the escape valve, if you will, for the system, that the water has to be able to flow out to the street. And so in my mind, that does justify the need to put in a retaining wall and raise the grade of the back corner of the lot. And that takes me in the direction of agreeing that a variance here should be permitted. But I also take very seriously that the trees there are appreciated by the neighbors, and that having rapidly growing replacement trees that truly have every chance of being successful is really important. And therefore, I strongly support what Rich and Stephanie were raising, which is if we were to approve the variance, there has to be a widening of that. And I would really just ask, I don't know if I feel comfortable determining exactly that tonight. I'd really prefer it or feel better if Tolbert, if you guys gave that a little more thought. But I think to me, the feeling is that there really should be enough. And I'm not at all convinced that the driveway leading back to that third garage, second garage, third car garage is either necessary, and certainly that drive has to be as wide as it's planned to be. And therefore, it seems to me a fair amount of space could be opened up to ensure that trees planted in that area would actually be successful. But I'd be very uncomfortable approving an ordinance variance to the ordinance unless we really felt assured that we, as best we can assure anything, that the plantings there would be successful and grow into a good solid set of trees, looking ahead. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Joy, do you have?
I guess my concern would be, we don't want a case, and I think, the neighbors have raised an interesting point that, we don't really want to create a precedent for removing trees willy-nilly. We're about to plant 75 new trees in town, which is fantastic. But we also want to make sure that we maintain our current tree canopy. I think, if in this case, if there is no other option than to remove these trees, we would want to make sure that, the variance is not granted until every other variance has been obtained and approved. So for example, I don't know how we do that, and maybe Ron can advise on whether that's conditional in terms of whether, the water board and the county approve the stormwater management plan, and whether the building permits are also approved by the town and county and whatever other authority.
Thank you. So yes, we can put conditions on this variance if we so chose to, in terms of how to proceed. So it's difficult for me to either not having a stormwater management plan in front of us that has been approved, right? So my thinking goes, because this hasn't been put in front of the water board yet, I don't know what the result might be. Now, it's been said that it's following standards per other water board variance decisions. So the likelihood of passage is higher, but it hasn't been passed. So we're not, we're a bit surmising and making a decision on something that hasn't been decided yet that could alter whether or not this particular plan will go through. I'm also a little bit uncomfortable in saying, I am not a construction, design builder type of person, and we're saying move this retaining wall. I don't know why the retaining wall had to be there and structurally or whatever, but I agree that we need to give trees the best fighting chances possible. So I'm a little hesitant about kind of making decisions like, move this wall and do it, all that, although seems logical to me. I'm not entirely sure that that's a role that we can play, because none of us here are that type of, meaning to just move it over. I don't know necessarily if that retaining
I don't
wall.
think the proposal is that we tell them just to move it over. It's to go back and discuss it and come back with a proposal that assures us that there's a survivability factor for
or
trees.
coming up with, there you go. So this goes back to, we kind of have incomplete information. We don't have the the approved stormwater plan. We don't have that final, we don't have construction documents, but we're being told that, you know, the tree variance is in front of us now. So it's a little bit of a difficult
I mean,
situation.
I also want to be sensitive to the fact that as you know, obviously a homeowner in Chevy Chase, you can be caught in kind of an endless circle of, well, we go to the water board, but then what if the council says we can't remove the trees and then, you know, and then like.
And I can address that point.
Yeah. If you could let,
So often this issue has come up, which ordinance should be reviewed first, water drainage, tree removal, or building regulation? Because sometimes we are presented with, you know, chicken and egg scenario, and the questions you ask are asked by the water board as well. Has this been approved by the town council yet? And what we have done in the past is say the applicant can choose which agency they want to go to first, because the code does not specify the order. The code doesn't specify that an applicant must have their tree removal appeal permit first or their water drainage plan approval first. So the applicant can choose what makes sense for them from a planning standpoint, because, you know, an applicant may not want to engage in very expensive plan preparation until knowing some fundamental questions like, will I be able to remove this tree? You know, if once I have that answer, then I can get more into the detailed plan reviewing. And that's been an approach that prior councils have accepted. This council can reach a different conclusion, but, you know, again, I just point out that as currently written, the codes don't dictate an order. Also, I'd like to point out that we haven't had one of these hearings in a while, a tree removal appeal. So I would just like to state, to the extent it helps your discussions, that we have a list of standard conditions that we attach to tree appeal decisions. I don't know whether or not this one would be granted, but if it would be granted, the standard conditions that I would include in the draft are that the tree can't be removed until a building permit is issued. So the three trees would not be removed until all other approvals were obtained, including water board, the county, and the town building permit. Also, because the town code provides that one of your considerations in the balancing test is reforestation, that reforestation should include a minimum goal of replacing the canopy trees to be removed. So based on that language, the council has in the past provided that reforestation trees should be at least 2.5 inches in caliber at the time of installation, selected from a list of approved reforestation trees, and we require a 2-year warranty. So if those trees don't survive 2 years, they have to be replaced, and replacement trees have another 2-year warranty. So those are standard conditions. Just wanted you to be aware of, because they address to some extent topics that have come up. Thank you.
Thank you. Another kind of thing as I think about precedent is that when I heard earlier that the house had sustained $150,000 in structural damage as a result of existing stormwater conditions, it's a pretty significant amount of damage that thinking about, you know, how this would be applicable.
I don't think it was represented as because of stormwater damage. It was just structural damage. Is that right?
Yeah, so perhaps another.
It was all stormwater damage?
Yeah,
well,
like
rainwater is different than stormwater drainage, right? I mean, it was dampness is what you're saying. Right. From the roof, right.
Okay. It was represented, the left side of the house had some significant damage associated with the drainage conditions there. So that's
my feeling is that it's important that the grade needs to be raised. And that's part of the stormwater management planning process, right? Because that's the only, I mean, that's the reason these trees wouldn't survive, is that if you raise that grade, it's going to cover up the viability of the tree. So I think at a minimum, you have to have a stormwater management plan first to see if that, if indeed that needs to be raised. And then we can deal with the issue of whether or not, we have adequate space for new trees to be planted. But I'm coming about to where Joy, it's, and I know we can't direct I guess we can't direct the builder to finish the stormwater management plan and then we come back to this.
Well, there are expenses associated with developing those plans. So I think that there's, we could place conditions, and another way to do this, are you asking that you want to see that? And then let's say that has to be changed at a later time. And if those plans need to change, they need to change. Or are you asking that you want to make sure that that's in place where perhaps there is an alternative that comes out that those 3 trees don't need to be removed? And therefore we can put that in as a condition that those trees are, the final decision about the removal or not is based on a approved stormwater management plan.
I haven't heard anything tonight about the wall, the retaining wall, and the distance between the house and the retaining wall. That I haven't heard anybody say I need to have that total width of that driveway to be able to enter into that front garage.
I didn't either.
I haven't
Yes.
heard any of that.
Right.
May I suggest the applicant address that?
Yeah, so we could reopen the record for the limited purpose of inviting the
Explaining
applicant
the
to
retaining wall. Okay.
address the question whether that retaining wall could be moved westerly, some distance, whether there could be a curve in it.
Yeah, generally what I would do in this case is I would consult with Tolbert and Dave is to find out how much I need for the tree to survive and to thrive. And I'm going to suggest what I need to turn around, get into that side load garage, back out, turn around and get out safely.
Mhm.
So we'll create models, do that. And then with that collaboration with Lane, we can move that wall in, perhaps maybe move the tree over a little bit if in fact I can't turn around out of that driveway. And the end result will be the same, but it's not going to change the stormwater management plan in any way. I really need to know whether those trees can come out conditioned on the step 1 for me is the trees. Step 2 is the stormwater management.
Why is the step 1 the trees that you haven't?
Because
I
the
don't understand
stormwater
that.
management takes into calculation the house placement, the garage placement, the yard, the driveway,
Right,
all the surfaces,
right.
and the retaining wall, the location. And so without knowing that the plan is the plan as it sits is not viable if I can't take those trees out. So
Those existing trees, if you move that wall 2 feet, are they within that?
no, the existing trees are
Would
not going to
encroach?
work where they're located. The garage doesn't
Move
work,
the
the
wall.
driveway doesn't work.
Yeah, because the existing trees are here, right?
No, this
So I
one's
can
coming
get-
out. That one's already going, that one's gone. That's been approved for removal.
Okay.
These
It's
two,
those
these are
red
3.
ones. Okay.
So if you move that over, I don't know. Again, it's probably, part of it is I just don't feel comfortable not knowing the stormwater management, whether indeed that'll work, that they raised the thing and that'll be approved.
I have a thought. I understand your question. It is a chicken and egg situation that you're confronting, and I see that. What you want to know is that if the final plan approved by the water board required, was in fact the plan you're proposing, that you raise the level of the ground there, would the council approve the removal of the trees? That's really the question you're asking, right? Okay. Seems to me that we can address that question tonight without formally approving the variance. In other words, maybe we have to, maybe we approve a variance with a whole lot of conditions to it. But it would basically be saying that we would approve the variance subject to the conditions, and one of those conditions would be that, in fact, the stormwater board, the board finds that raising the height of that corner is in fact necessary, which creates the flexibility that if the water board came back and said, no, we have a better plan that does not require raising the ground, then in that case, those trees would stay. In other words, you can, if you're able to accept I'm just posing this hypothetically, I can't speak for how my colleagues would vote, but if we said that you leave here with something, and maybe Ron or Todd have to help with how this would be drafted, that basically gives you assurance that if the plan that is approved by the water board creates the additional grade that you need, then yes, those trees can come down. That's all you really need from us tonight.
Yeah, subject to the space enough.
And also requiring enough space to ensure that those trees have every chance of thriving. Ron, is there some way that we can draft something like that?
Yeah, the first condition's rather easy. The approval tonight could be conditioned on approval of the subject plans by the water board. And if the water board were to find an alternative plan appropriate that does not require raising of the height at the corner, then the tree appeal would have to be reconsidered. Right. With respect to the second point, I think we need more specificity for the decision rather than saying enough space shall be provided. We can't leave that question open for further or future determination. We need to make the determination tonight how much space is needed. Dr. Feather said 1 foot.
Well, we heard earlier, there's 2 feet, and the idea that it.
Tolbert's, your recommendation, Tolbert, is 3 feet?
3 feet.
Yeah, well, I guess the other question, if I
could we say at the determination of the town arborist?
Yeah, that's where I was heading.
Yeah, well, I guess the question is, there's a proposal to plant 3 arborvitaes, generally where the hemlocks are, but not exactly. I mean, does the council feel very strongly that they need to be placed where they're shown on this plan?
But we do want to have enough space that they thrive.
Right. I mean, you could put 2 trees next to the new garage and 1 down toward the front of the property.
Oh, I think.
And they would be the same canopy that you're achieving,
But
in a
not,
slightly different location.
I would
not
just,
to the same effect of the neighbor. Though.
yeah, I would like to see something restored to the extent possible to what the neighbors currently enjoy. So
As quickly as possible.
as quickly as possible, yeah.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. So how do we craft that, Ron?
Ron, I think we can do that, right? I absolutely think we can.
I don't think we can have a decision that says the trees will be planted in an area where they will be likely to survive. We need to make the determination where they will be likely to survive tonight.
That's what we're suggesting, that it be at the determination of the town arborist.
But see,
Well,
that's
no,
that's a
well,
conditional approval, because then the arborist would have to make a finding that there is.
I think that the trees that get planted need to be in an area similar to where they are, because one of the concerns is the neighbors screening. And so it's got to be in that same vicinity. You can't put 2 up in the front by the front property line and 2 by the back property line, because that you then eliminate that whole screening of from the neighbor. So it's that area.
Well, what about a condition that would provide the trees would be planted where proposed, and the retaining wall would need to be moved at least X feet to the west. And if the applicant were to subsequently determine that that's not possible, then the decision would have to be revisited.
That would work. Yes,
That would work.
at least 3 feet. But if it comes back in a different, for whatever determination it has to come back.
Okay.
Gosh. So an approved building plan, an approved water board decision variance, at least 3 feet from the property line. And then are we going to go into types of replacement trees or size of replacement trees? No.
Well, I think the language that Ron proposed, at least 2.5 inches in caliper and a 2-year warranty should be added.
I think the typical conditions are.
Typical condition, so we don't want to make sure that it's,
No.
okay, that's
2.5
fine.
Maybe a minimum height.
Minimum height,
Arborvitae doesn't come in caliber.
Doesn't come in caliber. Height.
okay.
Oh,
What's the minimum height?
8 to 10.
8 to 10, right now it's 40, right now, okay. What's the, above 8 to 10, what's the next,
10 to 12. 12 to
okay,
14.
so it's that little, okay. No, I just wasn't sure if you go straight to 20. Okay. Okay, all right. And how do you feel about
Well,
that?
I know there's an inverse relationship between survivability and size of the initial tree, right? So in terms of optimizing height against survivability, what height do you recommend?
With 3 feet, I think it's 8 to 10.
8 to 10?
Okay,
8 to 10 feet high initially, okay.
All right, good.
So what do we need to do?
are those the only conditions?
plus the typical conditions.
Yes, of course, above and beyond what we typically.
And the clarity that Ron will be expressing, which is that we would be approving the removal of the trees, subject to the water board's determination that the gradient level must be changed in order to meet the requirements for the town.
Right, if there's a
So in
decision
other words, because at the end of the day, some new plan, this is your point that Rich was concerned
that
about, I
could
agree.
save these trees.
If
then-
it turns out that they don't have to change the grade, then we don't want the trees to come down.
Ron, is that, okay? he's
Yes,
taking it.
yep, that works.
If there is another way of doing this, yeah.
Right.
Does the council want to include the 9 horn beams as a condition as well, or? So in the proposal from the applicant, it was 3 arborvitaes, there were also horn beams along the back.
Mhm.
No, that's fine.
Those are good. Fine.
But do you want to require it?
Do you want to, the answer, the question is, do you want to
Does the
require?
council want to require it as part of the decision?
Yeah,
Yes, I think condition on the proposed mitigation replanning plan.
The mitigation as proposed, yeah. Okay. Are any other conditions, any other concerns, questions? Yeah.
keep beating it to death.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Oh, you're not going to repeat the whole thing again?
I was gonna let.
As explained with conditions,
As
so
explained
moved.
by the.
Yes,
our
I've got
attorney.
it. I've got it.
Yeah, we got it. We got it.
I'll second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
I appreciate the discussion on this. I know it took a really long time. It's not something that we go through normally. I appreciate the neighbors' concerns and fully understand that there is that balance, as Stephanie has explained. And hopefully we're going to have the best possible solution moving forward. And yeah, that's tough to do, but thank you. Thanks for everyone's time. Great. Does anyone need a break for 2 minutes? Okay, we can continue.
And I'll say goodnight.
Okay, good night, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, good night.
Wicca, why don't you stay and
Jeez.
hear about the Bethesda Market Park?
Wow.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
So we, if you can believe it, are only 15 minutes behind the agenda schedule.
Let's
So
move it on.
let's move along.
We're doing.
So Bethesda Market Park,
Not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot
to
to
say,
update, yeah.
but some good news, I guess. The developers finally had their meeting with the county Department of Transportation and with the attorney's office for the county. That's really important to review the draft general development agreement, GDA, that the county finally, after 7 months, marked up and returned as a substantially new document back to the developers. So they had that meeting just 2 days ago. And the developers reported to me that the meeting went very well. They felt that the county was clearly still very much in tune to wanting to make this project happen. And that the legal team was indeed focused on wanting to solve problems and try to move this forward. So the spirit and tone of that meeting was very good. And I think the background here is that up front, the county essentially promised two things without necessarily knowing that they were in conflict with each other. And that's what really emerged only when the new legal team really got into it. And the conflict was that on one hand, what was promised in order to avoid interest during construction to bring down the budget cost was that every party would pay their pro rata share on a monthly basis so that there would just not be any interest during construction. You wouldn't need it. You would not be taking out a construction loan for this part of the project. On the other hand, the county also had said, we want this to be a real estate transaction, meaning we basically sell something and then we later buy something. And that's the way we avoid having to deal with all the procurement regulations. Well, those two structures don't mesh. If they think of it as a real estate deal, then the idea of having monthly payments against progress to avoid interest during construction doesn't make any sense, because that's not what you would do. You don't, you buy a house when it's finished. That was what I think was sort of the underlying tension that finally surfaced when the new legal team finally got on board, which only really happened this fall. And so apparently, though, the resolution is still to be worked out more thoroughly, but the structure of it will certainly be a real estate transaction. But what offers some flexibility is that the county is willing to consider a deposit that would be made up front. So that would help potentially cover some of the development costs before closing. And also to work with the timing of payments so that it would also be possible to cover the issue of or interest during construction. You can imagine an early payment that's enough to carry forward, and then final payment. Anyway, they're going to think about that, but they think there's a way through that mess.
A clarifying question. So in terms of the incongruency between the way the county would approach this and the way the builder would approach this? It's inside. It's the county's own two proposals that were in conflict with each other. The county had said, no interest during construction so we can hold down the costs. Right. The county said, let's have a real estate transaction so we avoid all procurement issues. Okay.
And those turned out to be in conflict with each other.
So as a practical matter, that means that a real estate transaction would be a one-time payment for those properties?
Well, that's what's being explored, but it is at least a two-time payment, because there would be at financial close, and pardon me here, but let me just make sure so we're all on the same page. Where financial close will probably not occur now until, I'll say, let me think, make sure I get this right. If it's 2024, January of 2026. Okay. So that financial close means all the development work has been done, all the design work, all the construction bids, all the permits are in place, and the construction loan for the project, for the developer's project, the $150 million of these two buildings, all of that has been raised in place and they're ready to proceed for construction.
And so with that money that they've borrowed, they would pay the county whatever it is for those proproperties for lot 10
exactly. That's when they will put in their $7 million. That's right. But the plan for the county was all along that the developers instead of paying that 7 million in cash up front, would be allowed to pay it gradually as they are building the garage. Okay, but that would be one very major payment that would be on the table. The county would top that up with some additional payment at construction close, but then there would still be a final payment when at the end, when the garage is finished and the condominium interest in the property, which holds the garage, would be conveyed back to the parking lot district. So the two anchor payments are at construction, or call it notice to proceed to build, and 2.5 years later when the garage is finished. So that's why there's still some uncertainty, I think, about exactly how interest charges are avoided. But if you make the front payment large enough, it helps. I think that's kind of where they are. And the idea of a deposit, which would be made much earlier than construction close, arguably when the legal documents are signed, which we hope will be early next year, that deposit was essentially what would be used to fund the county's pro rata share of the development costs that have to be carried for the design and permitting process. So that's kind of what they're feeling their way toward. The developers are marking that up, are going to send it back to the county. They'll have another discussion. After that first round, then the draft document will be made available to the other parties, including the town. That's when we'll review it. So that's what has been initially set up. The county also said that they feel very strongly that they do not want the old arrangement where the town reimbursed the county. They want the town to pay its money directly to the developers.
Why is that?
Not clear. That's just, I mean, we've asked the question before. I don't know if you were on the phone that you were, and Chris Conklin did not know. And I didn't have a chance to get debriefed on that just over a quick phone call 2 days ago. But they have that view right now. So instead, what they want is for our $1.1 million contribution to the garage to go directly to the developers. Todd and Irene have discussed that. Offhand, we don't know of any particular reason to be opposed to that. What does matter to us is that it doesn't change the pro rata obligation that we had signed up for in terms of how we would be contributing to the garage, as long as the payments go in. And we don't want to be suddenly find ourselves in a position where we have to examine, invoices to determine whether construction has been properly done. That's not our job. So provided that we don't accept any additional burdens, I don't think we feel inherently we should find this objectionable to have the money go straight to the developers. And there is a possible upside, which is that we might well be going to the state to get reimbursed by the state for a lot of this money. Why not? There's $1 million, at least, maybe 1.5 million coming to us. And maybe it's even easier for us to make the case to the state if the whole channel of payment is simpler. So if our money has gone straight to the developer, then it's clear to the state what the town has already put into the project. And that's somewhat speculative, but plausible, that it'll be easier. So anyway, at this point, I think we need to see the agreement after it's had one turn, then see how our payment the structure of our payment should be channeled in a way that does not increase our burden. Right. If that can be done in a way that sends it straight to the developer per the county's preference, fine. There's no reason for us not to do that. If we do see problems with it, then we'll have to speak up and say we've got a problem. But right now, we just don't know that that would be the case. So that's where that stands. Then separately, we've asked the developers have now commented back to the Parks Department on the agreement that the Parks Department had initially drafted, which the developers found very objectionable. They were not happy with it, but they have now sent back their comments, and they will be pressing the Parks Department to engage on a negotiation on that agreement. A question was raised, which is, okay, well, now that the county has said that they want our payments in respect to the garage to go straight to the developers, might it be the case that the Parks Department would also choose to go the same thing? In other words, hey, well, we'll pay for half the park, the half you're paying for, why don't you just send your money straight to the developers? There's no inherent reason that should be the case. In other words, the two agreements can be structured differently. I think the fundamental attitude that the Parks Department has about their management and oversight of the project is quite different. Where the county is saying this is a real estate transaction, give us a garage to these specifications for this price. The Parks Department, I think, sees it much more as a construction project of a park that they're overseeing and going to be steadily engaged in. So it may be that we end up with agreements that work differently, and we end up at the end of the day with the Parks Department still reimbursing the Parks Department, and they are actually overseeing that. But again, we have to see more from their side before we can come to that judgment.
So can I ask then a related question to this? So we don't have any agreements in place, but like, what is the governance mechanism once the agreements are in place? Because is there, we have an agreement with parks and we have an agreement with the county, and then developer has agreement with the county. Like, who makes sure that the whole thing works and that the
That is a really good question. All right. I'm really glad you asked that. I can't see Todd's face, but I can see the grin on his face. It's symbolic.
Oh, yeah.
What we had, now I can see the grin. What we had always said was, wouldn't it be nice to have a short master agreement that basically made clear what all the mutual responsibilities were? And again, for reasons that have not been explained to us, the county is still resistant to such an agreement. But what they're saying is an alternative, which in fact we had put on the table and discussed some when we were working with the previous lawyer, which is you basically have a master closing day when everybody comes to sign the documents at the same time and everybody has seen everybody else's documents. So if our concern is, well, how do we know that the budget is there? On the table will be the documents that pledge the county's $9 million, the developer's $7 million, all the different components would be embedded in all the agreements. We'd all be seeing all the agreements before anybody signs, and we all sign at the same time.
Both lots are part of this. It's not being
Yes.
split out.
Right, right. So that's, I won't say that's an elegant solution, but as long as we can see all the agreements and everything is essentially a precondition for everything else.
Can we go say 1, 2, 3, go?
Go. And we all-
Everybody
we
has
all-
to do it at the same time.
Exactly. So that's what might happen. Having said that, having said that, you can be sure that there will be those of us who might be engaged in this process who will want to be there looking at the budget and making sure everything tallies exactly. And Irene made a very good point, which is that one of the things that the lawyers for the county have offered up is that the agreement to sell lot 10 for the parking lot district to sell lot 10 to the Parks Department will be one of those initial agreements. So that gives us assurance that both parks will actually be developed, which is actually which is vital to us.
Yeah.
And that is I think I reported on this before, that's a very important and very clear shift from the position taken by the previous county attorney, who said basically, I don't care about lot 10, which is what he was concerned. So the county is now fully back on board to the initial conception. So that's good news. So all this is still going to have to be watched carefully. And we're still facing, in my view, basically all in approximately a 1-year delay, because we had all hoped that initially the site plan would have been submitted 2 months ago. And I think we'll be doing, assuming that the legal documents get done by, I'm saying March, but I don't know. But if it is March, then they really are cranking on all the design work. It's still going to be 6 months before they submit a site plan. So it'll be next fall before the site plan is submitted. Then 3 or 4 months for approval of that. We know what it takes to get site plans approved.
Okay.
And then the developers estimate about a year to get the permits.
I have one question.
Only one.
Only one. When does your contract as integrating contractor run out?
That's your 2-year term on the town council. The only other thing I say is I think, and I mentioned this to Irene and Todd, but there's still going to be the issues of cost overruns and how those are tackled.
Oh, yeah.
That I think is going to be coming down the pike pretty soon. We'll have to be engaged in thinking about that. But anyway, this was a good meeting. The tone was good. That's helpful. That's not always a given. And pleased about that, but I wish we could have more progress.
Boom,
I'm sorry.
boom.
Boom.
Thank you. Okay. Maryland Municipal League. So Joy and I had the pleasure of attending the fall conference at College Park, Maryland, about a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, something like that. Happy to give just a summary. If you enjoy, let me know if I'm missing anything here. There were various breakout sessions, one having to do with traffic issues and cut through traffic and the usual suspects around what to do there. And I attended the small municipality breakout, and I have to say, due to the excellent staff that we have and the resources and the passion of the people, both on our committees and on this council here, we are not facing nearly 75% of the issues that are being faced by a bunch of other small municipalities around the state. Now, this was not just Montgomery County, but this was municipalities.
Make me feel better. What are some of the other issues that we've avoided that they're facing?
Well, there are budgetary, so there are issues where private equity companies have come in and purchased land, and they have been sitting on it for a period of time, and now they want to build. But they're thinking we're just going to hook into the local, pay the hookup fees to use the local water and sewer or whatever is going on, not upgrading the infrastructure alongside. So when I think about what's going on with Corso, where they will definitely need to update from a stormwater management perspective, the people are begging on this side for what's happening, whereas, we have that in place in Montgomery County and certainly within the town. So that kind of stuff. There are people who are still trying to figure out what to do with their ARPA funds. TikTok. They have no idea. There are many who are some very interesting ideas came out with respect to the hiring of specifically enforcement engineers on a short-term basis. So because of the ensuing development issues that are going on, they're actually hiring people, if you will, on spec to say, if you can go out and get grants like green infrastructure grants or whatever, you're effectively paying your own salary for, meaning you as a municipality receiving those grants that are in effect paying the person's salary, and then hoping in 2-3 years it all kind of catches up after that, which I thought was okay. That's very interesting. Some are using ARPA grants just to fill the gap there. So kind of, all over the place. There are people who are having tremendous issues with Airbnb and VRBO, where it's actually pushing out residents to such a point that schools are starting to be on the list to be closed. People are moving out because it's all just turning into a vacation kind of community instead of residents. So again, very, very grateful for the type of community that we're having here. We're all happy to have here. Recreational cannabis is also another huge issue. There are a lot of people in the room anyway that were not happy with just what was passed with respect to the state and municipalities authority or not to be able to, meaning like we're not allowed to ban the distribution sites from starting up, but we're allowed to weigh in and ban on consumption sites. So there's a lot of tug of war going on in various parts of the state around that. What else? Housing supply. There was a good breakout session about that and NIMBYism and all that. Sustainable Maryland. So there's a lot of new municipalities, including Kensington, that became one of the newest cities to be a part of the initiative. I know that a few years back, we talked about it, not we, the royal we as a town talked about this. And I personally would like to understand a little bit more about why Kensington thought that was a good idea and what benefits they think they might get out of it. All of us have a little bit more access now to the National League of Cities stuff, but we've been a member, so may not be as relevant to us. And the last thing is, for me, is that there's a new caucus called Maryland Women of Local Municipal Government. And I was pushed in there and became the co-chair of this new caucus, along with Mayor Dia Costello of Glen Echo. So it's a new group, and hopefully you both will be able to join in, meeting monthly with council members and other officials around the state to talk about just the issue. It's not going to be a feminism thing as much as just a growth, leadership kind of whatever. So that's all I got. I don't know if anything else on your end was what you got out of that meeting.
Rich, we form a caucus? We're a minority.
Minority, yeah.
Literally, yes.
Yeah, my focus at that meeting was on legislative priorities, and I did brief the council, I believe at our last meeting, about what MML legislative priorities will be. And so there was a lot of talk about, strategizing on the tax differential issue, which again does not touch us because we have worked that out with Montgomery County. And so our residents are not being double taxed, but that's not the case across the state. So that's a big initiative. And the other initiative is, of course, the speed camera and being able to have a having a municipality allowed to issue citations for speed cameras without having a sworn officer sign the citation. And it's very interesting. I view that, lack of authority on our part as, particularly bothersome because I hate cut through traffic here. Hate it. But for many municipalities, as Irene mentioned, it's really a revenue issue. So to the extent that, they have to have sworn officers sign these things, then those sworn officers are not out doing what they really need to be doing. And so they kind of see that if that initiative were passed, that it could help them raise more revenue, which I can appreciate, but it's again, it's very interesting. So I guess moral to the story is that, our municipalities in the state are very diverse and have, a host of different issues based on, are we near metropolitan areas? Are we in rural areas? Are we, what is the political timbre of our, our regional area? And how well are people playing together in sandboxes? So.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, sure.
So one of the conversations that was had during the conference, and then a little bit follow up there, was the prospect of municipalities having more defined regulatory authority, or defining that to make it abundantly clear, and very well received within the conference about the prospect of just overall, there's a housing issue. This is not just, in our area, but nationwide as well. We're having a discussion later on this week about this. We're in the meantime, though, did receive notification back from MML that apparently of the counties around the state, there's a little bit in Prince George's County that those municipalities facing the same issues that we are, but their authority is actually much more narrower than what we currently have. So it's a bit of it's a different relationship that they have with their county council that those municipalities have than we do with Montgomery County. The rest of the state, the municipalities do not have this issue at all with respect to the differences of what they can control. So I'm wondering if it's an issue of equity, if we want to talk about that, about how all municipalities should be kind of treated the same across the state.
With regard to zoning and single family residential.
Yeah.
Residential generally is distinct from only single family.
Yeah, well, no, just in general, that there isn't this really defined. For us in down county, Montgomery County, we're the only ones in the state facing this particular situation. It is not a statewide municipality issue, because in other municipalities, they're able to,
The state have zoning, essentially,
they have more control, yeah.
Oh, so thank you. I wasn't clear about so you're saying other municipalities have more control over their zoning.
Yes.
We're one of the relatively few that are stuck with.
And PG County too, that are, although they're a lot more defined than what we currently have. And part of it is because back in the 1950s, when, you know, things were starting to expand in this area, there was this particular idea of keeping it as a DC-wide planning effort, right? That's close to the district. So we're gonna just keep having discussions and you know, see where that goes. But that's about that. I had one more thing, if it's okay. I attended a meeting earlier online earlier this afternoon about the Capitol Crescent Trail and the amenities that they'd like to add to that. There were 130. The one towards DC line, yeah. So from Bethesda to the DC line, and there were 130 people on the line, according to them. But I know there was one resident because this person did ask a question. Just letting you know, it was actually a very interesting discussion because literally half of the group wants an expansion of the trail that would allow just bicyclists or vehicle motorized, you know, kind of e-bikes to wheelchairs or whatever. One side have a demarcated line and then have pedestrian access because it's getting so crowded. That being said, they're dividing that Capitol Crescent Trail into 5 segments, and it necessarily doesn't need to be the same treatment along all 5 segments. So for Bethesda to River Road, maybe that is some, because it is really, really crowded and then it kind of thins out after that. There was a lot of discussion about better signage, just so you can find, you know, get off the trail and find your space in or other areas. And there was a huge discussion about it's no longer just a pleasure trail, but it's a source of a transportation trail. So when you think about people using it to commute to their various, you know, either here in Bethesda or down to DC, Georgetown, that is something that's becoming increasingly important, which now we're going back to this, you know, widening this. Of course, there was talk about pollinators and you know, amenities like more benches and things like that. So I'm going to ask if for the town crier, because they're going to have the survey open for another 2 months, and you can not only fill out a survey, but also go to mcatlas.com. .com. I don't, you told me about .org, and basically you drop a pin on the different type of amenities you want for the certain, so it's very interactive. For the certain segment, you might want a bench here, something else there, whatever, but everything's on the table right now. And then after they pull together this new set of amenities, then they're going to go for the capital improvement
CIP.
funds, CIP. Thank you. So it'll be at least 2026 until you see anything. So
Tomorrow.
There you go. Anyway, thank you for indulging me there. Otherwise,
I'll tell you what, I can't remember whether this came up in our last meeting or whether it only came up at the time of the CAT meeting, but our view about trying to speed up the opening of the bridge. Did we already talk about that here? Okay. There was a, you know, one of these community action team, whatever they call it. It's really silly. And one of the issues that we thought of and we raised on the phone was that, you know, background, we've always wanted to see the Capitol Crescent Trail opened as soon as the actual physical work on the trail, on the tracks were done, even when the trains were being tested. Why not open the trail? And the earlier team had said, yeah, it's fine. The current team says, no, that's still a real problem. We aren't going to do that. So anyway, the thought was, well, what about this bridge? You know, bridge is in place, the ramp is there, the exit ramp's being built. Why can't we at least open up that bridge from Elm Street Park to Pearl Street, which would allow our kids on that whole side of town to have a much better way to get to
Yeah.
school, and also allow people from East Bethesda to have a whole nother point of access into Bethesda. So of course, this hit them, like deer in headlights. I never thought about it. So we got a real sort of namby-pamby answer of, well, we got another 6 months of construction, da-da-da-da-da. So anyway, just to let you know, it's on our radar screen. East Bethesda is very jazzed about the idea. We want to raise it and push it with Jared Solomon and basically make sure that this stays on the radar screen of the Purple Line people, that if they really care, that's a big if they really care about, community feelings here, a little bit of goodwill and opening up that bridge to allow that traffic long before everything else is finished would be a really good thing.
Go a long
So
way.
anyway, we'll keep on working on that.
Has failed brakes. It goes off.
Flies off. No, you know what?
It hits the bridge. It hits the bridge.
No, you know what I think it is? I think it's just in time delivery of materials. So that's going to be more like, hey, we didn't plan until this at the end. We have all this other things that we need to put in.
Fencing is only coming at the last moment.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
ordering a section of fence to come in 8 months early is really going to blow our brains. So-
Apparently.
So
Anyway,
anyway, however,
And when are we gonna hear on the Rosemary Park?
next month we'll be able to, yeah, we're getting a little bit closer to an answer, which will, yeah, we're getting more information.
December,
So,
okay.
yeah. All right.
Good.
Thank you.
All right.
Adjourned.